The Montana wind carried the scent of pine and coming snow. September had arrived in the high country with its usual warning that winter was never far behind. The ranch sat in a valley between mountains that had witnessed a century of seasons, their peaks already dusted white against the deep blue of an afternoon sky. James Brennan stood on the porch of his cabin, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. 58 years old, retired, alone except for the horses in the barn and the ghosts that visited him in the small hours before dawn. The ranch was small, 20 acres, enough to keep a man busy but not so much that the work broke him. 3 horses, a barn that needed constant repair, a cabin with 1 bedroom, and a wood stove that ate logs like a hungry animal during the winter months. It was the kind of place a man came to when he wanted the world to forget about him. James had bought it 6 years ago with his pension and the money from selling his father's house in Ohio. He had driven west without a plan, just a need to put distance between himself and everything he had been. The real estate agent in Kalispell had thought he was running from a divorce. She was wrong. James was running from something that could not be left behind, no matter how many miles he put on the odometer. He was running from February 23, 1991. The memory came uninvited. It always did. The desert, the heat that made the air shimmer like water, the scope of his rifle pressed against his eye socket, and the voice beside him. Calm, steady, the voice of a man who trusted James with his life. Robert Cole, Sergeant Robert Cole, spotter, friend, the man who had saved James's life in the first week of Desert Storm and died saving it again 3 weeks later. James closed his eyes and let the Montana wind wash over his face. Cold, clean, nothing like the desert air that had tasted of oil smoke and burning and death. When he opened his eyes again, the mountains were still there, solid, real, anchoring him to the present. He had not fired a rifle in 6 years, had not even touched one. The weapons he had brought from his military service were locked in a gun safe in the barn, buried under tarps and boxes of old gear he could not bring himself to throw away. Sometimes he wondered if they were rusting. Probably. Metal needed care, needed attention, needed a purpose. James had none of those things to give. The sound of a vehicle broke the silence, gravel crunching under tires. James set down his coffee and walked to the edge of the porch, his hand automatically moving to his hip where a sidearm used to rest. Old habits. They died harder than the men who taught them. A black SUV came up the long driveway, moving slow and deliberate. Government plates. James could see them even at a distance. His jaw tightened. He had been off the grid for 6 years. No phone, no internet. Just a post office box in town that he checked once a month for bills and the occasional letter from the Veterans Affairs Office. Whatever this was, it was not good news. The SUV stopped 20 feet from the porch. The engine cut off. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, maybe 5'9", athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, army uniform, captain's bars on her collar. Her face was angular, sharp, the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from something harder than flesh. But her eyes were softer than the rest of her. Brown, searching, carrying a weight that James recognized because he carried the same weight himself. She walked toward this porch with the controlled movements of someone who had been trained to minimize wasted motion. Her boots were spit-shined, her uniform pressed. Everything about her screamed active duty, everything except those eyes. James stayed where he was, waiting, letting her come to him. She stopped at the base of the porch steps and looked up at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the trees. A crow called from somewhere in the distance. The mountains watched. Then she spoke. Her voice was clear and steady, but there was something beneath it. Something that sounded like pain, held at bay by sheer force of will. Sergeant Major Brennan. James shook his head slowly. Not anymore, just James. Mr. Brennan, if you need a title. The woman's jaw worked. She was thinking, calculating, deciding how much to say and how fast to say it. My name is Captain Rebecca Cole. I need to talk to you about my father. The world tilted. Just for a second. Just long enough for James to grip the porch railing and steady himself. Cole. The name hit him like a fist to the sternum. He had spent 6 years trying to forget that name. 6 years trying to outrun the guilt that came with it. You should leave, he said. Rebecca Cole did not move. I drove 19 hours to find you. I am not leaving until you answer my questions. James turned away from her. His hands were shaking. He shoved them in his pockets where she could not see them. I do not have any answers for you. You were there. Her voice was harder now, louder. February 23rd, 1991. Operation Steel Hammer. You were my father's sniper. He was your spotter. You were together when he died. James kept his back to her. He could see his reflection in the cabin window. 58 years old, but looking older. Gray hair, lines carved deep into his face by sun and wind and sleepless nights. The face of a man who had lived too long with things he could not fix. Your father died a hero, James said. That is all you need to know. That is what they told me at the funeral. Rebecca's boots hit the porch steps. She was climbing, coming closer. I was 5 years old. They gave my mother a flag and a medal and a letter from the president. They told me my father gave his life in service to his country. They told me he was brave. She was on the porch now, standing 6 feet behind him, close enough that he could hear her breathing. Fast, controlled, angry. What they did not tell me, she continued, is why he died, what the mission was, who he was protecting. The file is classified. 33 years later, and it is still classified. Do you know how that feels? To grow up with no memory of your father's face? To only know him through photographs and other people's stories? James turned to face her, up close. The resemblance was undeniable. She had Robert's eyes, Robert's jawline, Robert's way of standing like she was rooted to the earth, and nothing short of an artillery strike would move her. Your father died protecting me, James said quietly. Is that what you came here to find out? Rebecca's face did not change, but something in her eyes did. A flicker, recognition, confirmation of something she had already suspected. Tell me what happened. No, Sergeant Major Brennan. I told you, I am not Sergeant Major anything anymore. I am a man who wants to be left alone. Rebecca took a step closer. Her voice dropped to something just above a whisper. My father wrote letters. Did you know that? Every deployment, every mission, he would write to my mother and tell her things he could not say out loud. After he died, she gave me the letters when I turned 18. I have read them all, hundreds of pages. And in every single one from Desert Storm, he mentions you. Hawk. That was your call sign, wasn't it? James said nothing. He wrote about how you were the best shot he had ever seen, how you could hit targets at ranges that should have been impossible, how you taught him to read the wind like a language most people did not even know existed. She pulled something from her jacket pocket, an envelope, old, worn, the paper yellowed with age. This is the last letter he ever wrote, February 22nd, 1991, the night before he died. He wrote about a mission, a target at extreme range. He said that if anything went wrong, my mother should find you when I was old enough to understand. He said you would tell me the truth. James stared at the envelope. He did not reach for it, could not reach for it, because if he touched it, if he read Robert's words from the night before the world ended, he would break. And he had spent 6 years building walls to make sure that never happened. I cannot help you, he said. Rebecca held the envelope between them, an offering, a plea. My brother is selling military secrets, she said. Classified sniper techniques, training protocols, tactical procedures. He is selling them to private military contractors who are selling them to whoever pays the most. Drug cartels, terrorist organizations, whoever. James blinked, focused. This was new information, dangerous information. Your brother, Lieutenant Marcus Cole, he was discharged from Delta Force 2 years ago. Dishonorable. The details are classified, but it involves stolen classified materials and conduct unbecoming. He disappeared after the court-martial until 3 weeks ago. She pulled out her phone, swiped, turned the screen toward James. It was a photograph, grainy, taken from a distance. A man in civilian clothes standing in what looked like a warehouse. Late 30s, broad shoulders, dark hair. James could see the resemblance to Robert, could see it in the way the man held himself. Military bearing that could not be erased no matter how many years had passed. That is Marcus, taken in Guadalajara, Mexico, 2 weeks ago. The man he is talking to is a known cartel enforcer. The files on the table between them contain training manuals, ballistics calculations, techniques for extreme range shooting. Rebecca swiped again. Another photograph. This one was clearer. A close-up of documents spread across a table. James could see diagrams, charts, handwriting he recognized. His chest tightened. Where did those documents come from? That is what I need you to help me figure out. Because the handwriting in some of those documents belongs to Colonel William Patterson. The second name hit Ivan harder than the first. Patterson, Colonel William Patterson, the man who had trained James, the man who had taught him everything he knew about being a sniper, the man who had been more of a father to him than his own flesh and blood. Patterson is retired, James said, has been for years. He is dying. Rebecca's voice softened. Terminal cancer, maybe 6 months. He is in a VA hospital in Georgia. I went to see him 3 weeks ago to ask about these documents, to ask if he knew how Marcus got his hands on classified training materials. She paused, swallowed hard. He said I should find you. He said if anyone could stop Marcus from destroying everything he built, it was Sergeant Major James Hawk Brennan. James turned away again, looked out at the mountains. They were still there, still solid, still real. But they felt farther away now, like the past was reaching across 33 years to pull him back into a world he had tried so hard to leave behind. I am not the man Colonel Patterson remembers, James said. That man died in the desert. Then maybe it is time he came back. Rebecca moved to stand beside him at the railing. She was looking at the same mountains, seeing something different, something James could not see anymore. My father believed in something, she said. He believed that the old ways mattered, that honor mattered, that keeping promises mattered. He wrote about it in every letter. He told my mother that if he did not come home, she should raise us to believe the same things. She turned to look at James. I am giving you a chance to keep a promise, not to me, to him, because whatever happened out there in that desert, whatever reason my father had to die, you are still here. You are still alive. And that means you still have a responsibility. James closed his eyes. The wind had picked up. Colder now, carrying the smell of snow that would fall before morning. When he opened his eyes, the light was different. Lower, the sun moving toward the western peaks. How did you find me? He asked. Colonel Patterson. He has kept track of every soldier he ever trained. He has files, addresses, phone numbers for those who still have them. He knew you had gone off grid. He knew you were trying to disappear. But he also knew you would not go far. Not really. Men like you need open space, need to see the horizon. He said to check Montana or Wyoming. Small towns, somewhere you could be alone. James almost smiled. Almost. Patterson had always been able to read people better than they could read themselves. And what exactly are you asking me to do? Rebecca straightened. Official now. Military bearing replacing the vulnerability she had shown moments before. Colonel Patterson is dying. Before he goes, he wants to pass on his legacy. He wants to train one final class of snipers using the old methods. The techniques that made him a legend. The same techniques your father and mine used in Desert Storm. She paused. The Army has approved a pilot program. 8 weeks, 6 recruits. If we can prove that traditional marksmanship training produces results that equal or exceed modern technology-assisted methods, the program continues. If not, it gets shut down and everything Colonel Patterson built dies with him. Why me? Because you are the best student he ever had. Because you can do things with a rifle that should not be possible. Because my father trusted you with his life. She let that hang in the air between them. And because Marcus is using those same techniques, he learned from Patterson too. Studied under him for 2 years before Delta Force. If anyone knows how Marcus thinks, how he operates, it is you and Colonel Patterson. And the colonel cannot leave his hospital bed. James was quiet for a long time. The sun touched the peaks, the light turned gold. Somewhere in the barn, one of the horses nickered. Normal sounds, normal life. The life he had built to replace the one that ended in the desert. When do we leave? He asked. Rebecca exhaled. Relief. She had been holding her breath without realizing it. Tomorrow morning, 600, there is a flight out of Kalispell to Atlanta. From there, we drive to Fort Benning, Georgia. That is where the program is being run. I need to see Patterson first. That can be arranged. James nodded slowly. He was committed now. No going back. The walls he had spent 6 years building were coming down whether he wanted them to or not. One condition, he said. Name it. When this is over, when we stop Marcus and finish the program, you leave me alone. You do not come back here. You do not call. You do not write. You let me disappear. Rebecca met his eyes, held them. She understood what he was really asking. Permission to go back to running. Permission to hide from the ghosts again. Deal. They shook hands. Her grip was firm, strong, her father's daughter in every way that mattered. She left soon after. The black SUV disappeared down the driveway, leaving only dust and the fading sound of an engine. James stood on the porch until the sun dropped behind the mountains and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Then he went to the barn. The gun safe was right where he had left it, buried under camping gear and old tack and boxes of tools he had not used in years. The combination lock was stiff from disuse. It took him 3 tries to get it open. Inside were the tools of his former trade: rifles, sidearms, ammunition, scopes, rangefinders, equipment that had been state-of-the-art in 1991 and was now hopelessly outdated. He ran his hand over the barrel of his old M24. The metal was cold, waiting. The rifle did not care that 6 years had passed. It was ready to do what it had been built to do. James lifted it from the safe. The weight was familiar, comfortable, like shaking hands with an old friend. He carried it to the workbench and began to disassemble it. His hands moved without thought, muscle memory taking over. Bolt carrier group, trigger assembly, stock, barrel, each piece laid out in precise order. The rifle was clean. He had cleaned it before putting it away 6 years ago, but it had not been fired, had not been zeroed, might not even shoot straight anymore. He would fix that. He worked through the night, cleaning, oiling, testing the action, the trigger pull, the scope mounting. When dawn broke over the mountains, the rifle was ready, and so was he. The flight to Atlanta was uneventful. Rebecca had arranged everything: first-class tickets, a rental car waiting at the airport, a hotel room near the VA hospital where Colonel Patterson was spending his final days. James spent most of the flight staring out the window, watching the country roll by beneath him. Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, the plains, the Mississippi, the Appalachians, America from 30,000 feet. Beautiful and vast and utterly indifferent to the small lives being lived on its surface. Rebecca sat beside him but did not push for conversation. She seemed to understand that James needed the silence, needed the time to prepare himself for what was coming. They landed in Atlanta at 1400 hours. The humidity hit James like a wet towel the moment he stepped off the plane. Georgia in September, still summer, still hot, nothing like Montana. The drive to the VA hospital took an hour. Rebecca drove. James watched the city slide past. Traffic, buildings, people living normal lives, going to work, coming home, unaware that men like Patterson existed, unaware of the sacrifices made so they could live those normal lives in peace. The hospital was a sprawling complex on the eastern edge of the city, modern, clean, efficient, the kind of place designed to process human suffering with maximum efficiency and minimum emotion. Rebecca checked them in at the front desk. Visitor badges, directions to Patterson's room on the 4th floor, oncology wing. The elevator ride was silent. James could feel his heart pounding, could feel the old familiar sensation of walking into danger. Patterson was not the danger. The memories were, the conversation that was coming, the reckoning with a past he had tried to bury in the Montana dirt. Room 447. The door was open. James could see inside. A hospital bed, medical equipment, monitors, IV drips, and a man who looked like a skeleton wrapped in old leather. Colonel William Patterson, 78 years old, 6'2" in his prime but now shrunken by disease. His hair was gone. His skin was the color of old paper. His hands rested on top of the blankets, gnarled and spotted with age. But his eyes were still sharp, still clear. The eyes of a man who missed nothing. Those eyes found James, locked on, and a smile spread across Patterson's face. Thin, tired, but genuine. "Hawk," the voice was a whisper, rough with pain and medication. "I knew you would come." James stepped into the room. Rebecca stayed in the doorway, giving them space, understanding that this conversation was between teacher and student, between two men who shared a bond that civilians would never understand. "Colonel?" "None of that, not anymore. Just Bill, or Patterson if you need the rank." James pulled a chair close to the bed, sat down. Up close, he could see how much the cancer had taken. Patterson weighed maybe 120 pounds. His arms were like sticks. His chest barely moved with each breath. "You look like hell, sir." Patterson laughed. It turned into a cough. When it passed, he wiped his mouth with a tissue. "So do you. Montana agree with you?" "It is quiet. Too quiet for a man like you." James did not answer. Patterson's eyes moved past him to Rebecca in the doorway. "She found you. Good. I told her you would be difficult, but not impossible. You had no right to send her. I had every right. You owe me. You owe Robert. You owe every man who ever trusted you with their life. The words were harsh, but the tone was gentle. Patterson was not angry. He was stating facts. I left that life behind, James said. You ran away from it. There is a difference. Patterson's hand moved slowly across the blanket, reached for something on the bedside table. A journal. Old, leather-bound, the cover worn smooth from years of handling. He picked it up with trembling fingers and held it out to James. Do you remember this? James stared at the journal. Of course he remembered. Patterson had carried it everywhere, had written in it after every mission, every training exercise, every moment of insight about wind and distance and the thousand small factors that separated a good sniper from a great one. Your journal. 53 years of notes. Every technique I ever developed. Every lesson I ever learned. Every secret I discovered about how to make the impossible shot. Patterson pressed the journal into James's hands. Marcus stole my laptop 3 months ago. Copied everything. Digital files. Scans of this journal. Ballistic calculations. Training protocols. Everything. He is selling it piece by piece to the highest bidder. James opened the journal. The pages were filled with handwriting. Diagrams. Calculations. The accumulated wisdom of a lifetime spent perfecting one skill. Why would he do this? Because he blames me for his father's death. James looked up sharply. Patterson nodded. Robert Cole saved your life, and I taught him the aggressive tactics that put him in that position. Marcus thinks if I had been more cautious, more conservative, his father would still be alive. That is insane. Maybe, but grief makes people insane. You should know that better than anyone. The barb hit home. James closed the journal. What do you want from me? I want you to teach. One last class, 6 recruits, 8 weeks. Teach them everything in that journal, everything I taught you, everything Robert died believing was worth protecting. Patterson's breathing was getting labored. The conversation was tiring him, but he pushed on. The Army is shutting down traditional sniper programs, replacing them with computer-assisted systems, drones, remote operators sitting in air-conditioned buildings pushing buttons. They say the old ways are outdated, inefficient. That technology can do it better. His eyes blazed with an intensity that belied his physical weakness. They are wrong, and I need you to prove it. One impossible shot, one demonstration that the human element still matters. That is all I am asking. James stood, walked to the window. Outside, the city sprawled in every direction. Millions of people, none of them knowing or caring about this conversation. I have not fired a rifle in 6 years, he said. Muscle memory does not forget. I am 58 years old, and I am 78 and dying. Age is just a number until you let it define you. James turned back to face him. Why does this matter so much to you? Patterson was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more vulnerable. Because I failed the only shot that ever really mattered. He gestured for James to come closer. James did. Patterson's voice dropped to barely a whisper. February 18th, 1991, 5 days before Robert died. We had intelligence on a high-value target, Iraqi artillery commander coordinating attacks on coalition forces. The shot was 3,200 meters, extreme range, extreme conditions, but it was doable. I had made longer shots in training. He paused, gathering strength. I missed. Not by much, maybe 6 inches. But in our work, 6 inches is the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. That artillery commander lived. His battery destroyed 3 American positions over the next week. 47 men died, including Robert Cole. James felt the air leave his lungs. You never told me this. I never told anyone. It is not in my official record. Not in any report. Just in this journal, the shot I missed, the men who died because of it. The 47 reasons I have spent the last 33 years trying to perfect what I do. Patterson's hand gripped James's wrist with surprising strength. I cannot make that shot now. I can barely lift a rifle. But you can. I know you can. I have seen you do things that should not be possible. 3,000 meters, 4,000 meters. Shots that make my miss look like child's play. That was a long time ago. Then prove you still can. Take my journal. Learn from my mistakes. Teach these kids. And when the moment comes, when the Army demands proof that the old ways still work, make the shot I could not make. Show them that all the drones and computers and technology in the world cannot replace a man with a rifle who refuses to miss. James looked down at the journal in his hands. 53 years of wisdom. 53 years of Patterson's life condensed into one leather-bound book. The weight of it was staggering. And if I fail, then we both failed, and everything I built dies with me. But I do not think you will fail, Hawk. You never have. A nurse appeared in the doorway, young, efficient, apologetic. I am sorry, but Colonel Patterson needs his rest. The doctor said no more than 30 minutes for visits. Patterson waved her away. 5 more minutes. The nurse hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. Patterson turned back to James. Fort Benning, tomorrow. There is a demonstration scheduled for 1400 hours. New AI-assisted rifle system. The military brass will be there, politicians, Pentagon observers. They are going to show off their technology, show how it outperforms traditional methods. A thin smile crossed his face. I arranged for you to be there as a civilian contractor. They do not know who you are. They think you are just some retired grunt I hired to provide a second opinion. What am I supposed to do? Watch, learn, and when they ask if anyone wants to try the old-fashioned way, you step up and show them what a real sniper can do. James shook his head in disbelief. You set this whole thing up. I am dying, Hawk. Not dead. I still have a few moves left. Rebecca stepped into the room. We should go. Let him rest. James stood. Patterson's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist one more time. February 23rd, 1991. I know what happened. Robert told me before the mission. He said if anything went wrong, it was not your fault. He said he trusted you with his life, and if that life ended, it ended doing what he believed in. Patterson's eyes were wet now, the first emotion James had seen beyond the determination. He forgave you 33 years ago, Hawk. Maybe it is time you forgave yourself. James could not speak, could not breathe. He nodded once and pulled away. Rebecca guided him out of the room. The door closed behind them. The hospital corridor stretched in both directions, fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, the smell of antiseptic and slowly dying men. They did not speak until they reached the car. The drive to Fort Benning took 4 hours. They left Atlanta at dawn the next morning. Rebecca drove again. James spent the time reading Patterson's journal. Every page was a revelation. Techniques James thought he had mastered were just the beginning. Patterson had spent decades refining, improving, discovering new methods. There was a section on reading thermals, how temperature inversions at different altitudes could bend a bullet's path in ways that ballistic computers could not predict. Another section on ground vibration, how to feel the approach of vehicles or personnel through the earth itself. Page after page of wisdom that could not be taught in a classroom or programmed into a machine. And near the end, a page that made James stop reading altogether. It was dated February 22nd, 1991, the night before Robert Cole died. Patterson's handwriting was shaky, emotional. Tomorrow we attempt the high-value target again, 3,200 meters. Same conditions that defeated me 5 days ago. But this time I am sending Hawk and Robert. Hawk's abilities exceed my own. If anyone can make this shot, it is him. If he succeeds, the war ends sooner. If he fails, I pray he does not fail. Beneath that, added later in different ink, were 3 words. He did not fail. But Robert Cole still died. James closed the journal and stared out the window. Georgia countryside rolled past. Pine forests, red clay. Small towns that looked like they had not changed in 50 years. America, the country he had served, the country Robert had died for. Fort Benning appeared on the horizon at 1300 hours. Sprawling, massive. One of the Army's largest installations. Home to the infantry school, ranger school, sniper school. The proving ground where warriors were made. Rebecca showed her military ID at the gate. The MP waved them through. She drove to a shooting range on the eastern edge of the base. Already dozens of vehicles were parked nearby. Military, civilian, news vans. This was bigger than James had expected. They parked and walked toward the range. A crowd had gathered. Officers in dress uniforms, civilians in suits, contractors, politicians. Someone had erected a viewing platform with chairs and shade covers. This was not just a demonstration. This was a show. On the firing line sat a rifle James had never seen before. Sleek, black, covered in electronics, tablets, and screens and components that looked more like a science experiment than a weapon. A technician in a polo shirt was explaining its features to a cluster of observers. Fully integrated ballistic computer, real-time atmospheric sensors, AI-assisted windage and elevation adjustments. The shooter just needs to place the crosshairs on target and squeeze the trigger. The system does everything else. Rebecca leaned close to James. That is what we are up against. The future of warfare according to the Pentagon. James said nothing. He was watching the rifle, studying it, already seeing its limitations. Electronics failed. Batteries died. Systems crashed. A rifle was only as good as the man behind it. And a man who relied on technology was not a man at all. A general stepped onto the platform, stars on his collar, ribbons covering his chest. He was in his early 60s, gray hair, hard eyes, the look of a career officer who had climbed the ranks through politics as much as performance. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I am Major General Richard Hayes, commander of the infantry school here at Fort Benning. His voice carried across the range through speakers set up around the viewing area. What you are about to witness represents the future of precision marksmanship. For decades, we have relied on human skill to make difficult shots under challenging conditions. Today, we demonstrate that technology can do it better, faster, and more consistently than even our most elite shooters. He gestured to the rifle on the firing line. This system has been in development for 3 years. It combines cutting-edge sensors with artificial intelligence to eliminate human error. The result is a weapon platform that can achieve first-round hits at distances up to 3,000 meters, regardless of environmental conditions or operator skill level. Applause from the crowd. James felt his jaw tighten. We will demonstrate this capability with a series of increasingly difficult shots. Targets at 1,500 meters, 2,000 meters, and finally 2,800 meters, all in current conditions. James looked downrange, heat shimmer rising from the ground, mirage effects dancing across the landscape, wind flags snapping and changing direction every few seconds. These were not ideal conditions. These were the conditions that separated good shooters from great ones. 10 shooters stepped up to the line. Young men and women, privates and specialists, average soldiers pulled from infantry companies. They would each take one shot with the AI-assisted rifle. The first shooter settled into position, placed the crosshairs on the 1,500-meter target. The rifle's computer chimed, adjustments calculated. The shooter squeezed the trigger. Miss, 3 feet low. Murmuring from the crowd, the general's smile tightened. The second shooter tried, miss, 2 feet right. The third, the fourth, the fifth, all misses. The AI was calculating based on program parameters but missing variables that only human experience could detect. The thermals James had read about in Patterson's journal, the ground effects, the microbursts of wind that changed everything in the second between calculation and impact. By the 10th shooter, not a single hit had been recorded. The targets at 1,500 meters remained pristine. The general's face had gone from confident to concerned to barely controlled anger. He stepped back to the microphone. We will adjust the parameters and try the 2,000-meter targets. But the result was the same. 10 more shooters, 10 more misses. The crowd was getting restless. This was supposed to be a demonstration of technological superiority. Instead, it was becoming an embarrassment. After the 20th miss, the general held up his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, clearly the environmental conditions today are more challenging than anticipated. We will reschedule this demonstration for a more appropriate time. He started to step away from the microphone. That was when James moved. He walked from the back of the crowd toward the firing line. People turned to look. Who was this? Some civilian in jeans and a flannel shirt, gray hair, weathered face, walking with the confidence of someone who belonged even though he clearly did not. General Hayes? James's voice cut across the murmur of the crowd. The general stopped, turned, his eyes narrowed. Who are you? James Brennan, retired sergeant major. I am here as a civilian observer at the request of Colonel Patterson. Recognition flickered in the general's eyes. Patterson's name still carried weight. What do you want, Sergeant Major? Permission to attempt a shot, the old-fashioned way. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. The general's expression hardened. With all due respect, we just watched 10 trained soldiers fail with state-of-the-art equipment. What makes you think you can do better with inferior technology? Because I learned from the man who wrote the book on extreme range shooting, and because technology cannot replace experience. The general looked like he wanted to refuse, but too many eyes were watching, too many cameras. Denying a decorated veteran the chance to try would look petty. Fine, one shot, 2,800 meters. The furthest target. If you miss, we end this circus and move on. James nodded. He walked to the firing line. The AI-assisted rifle had been moved aside. In its place, a standard M24. The same rifle James had used 33 years ago. Old technology, proven technology. He picked it up, checked the chamber, worked the bolt. The action was smooth, well maintained. He settled into prone position. The ground was hard, hot from the sun. His body remembered the position, the angle of his legs, the placement of his elbows, the way his cheek pressed against the stock. Muscle memory Patterson had been right about. He looked through the scope. The target was barely visible. A steel plate 2,800 meters downrange. Heat mirage made it dance and shimmer. The wind was gusting, 15 miles per hour from the northwest, but with cross currents. The thermals were creating vertical displacement, every factor working against him. James closed his eyes, breathed, felt the earth beneath him, felt the wind on his face, listened to the silence between his heartbeats. Then he opened his eyes and began to calculate. The Mirage was running left to right at about 7 degrees. That meant a crosswind of 12 miles per hour at the target distance. The thermals would push the bullet up approximately 8 inches in the first 1,000 meters, then down 6 inches in the next 1,000 as it passed through the temperature inversion layer. The ground vibration told him a vehicle was approaching from the west. Heavy, probably a truck. That would create a pressure wave in approximately 45 seconds. He had to shoot before then. James made his adjustments. 2 clicks right, 3 clicks up, then a half click left to account for the Coriolis effect at this range. His finger moved to the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. Smooth, steady. The rifle was an extension of his body. The bullet was an extension of his will. He fired. The recoil pushed against his shoulder. The muzzle blast kicked up dust. The bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second and began its journey across 2,800 meters of hostile air. 3.7 seconds of flight time. James watched through the scope, saw the bullet arc, saw it climb, saw it begin to fall. The Mirage made tracking difficult, but he had done this 1,000 times before. He knew where the bullet was, even when he could not see it. The steel plate rang like a bell. Dead center. The crowd erupted, cheering, applause, people standing. James stayed in position for another moment. Then he rose slowly, set the rifle down, walked away from the firing line without looking back. General Hayes stood frozen on the platform. His face was unreadable. Shock, anger, disbelief. Rebecca was waiting at the edge of the crowd. She was smiling. That was incredible. James handed her Patterson's journal. That was just the beginning. A hand fell on his shoulder. James turned, a man in a suit, late 50s, silver hair, kind eyes. He extended his hand. Sergeant Major Brennan, I am Thomas Wade, Brigadier General, retired. I served with Bill Patterson in Desert Storm. They shook hands. General Wade? Just Tom, I am here representing the Veterans Affairs Office. We have been following Colonel Patterson's work for years. That shot you just made, that was something special. It was a shot, nothing more. It was proof. Proof that the old ways still work. That is what Bill wanted, was it not? James nodded slowly. Wade smiled. Walk with me. They moved away from the crowd, found a quiet spot under a tree at the edge of the range. Wade pulled out a file folder, opened it. Bill Patterson has proposed a training program. 8 weeks, 6 recruits, traditional methods. He wants to prove that a sniper trained the old way can outperform any technological system, and he wants you to lead it. He mentioned something about that. The problem is, the military does not want to fund it. They have invested millions in that AI rifle system. Admitting it has flaws would be embarrassing, politically difficult. Wade closed the folder. But I can get it approved, not as an official military program, as a veterans outreach initiative, training the next generation, preserving historical techniques, the kind of thing that looks good in press releases and does not threaten any contracts. What is the catch? The catch is you have 8 weeks. At the end, there will be a final evaluation. If your students can match or exceed the performance of technology-trained snipers, the program gets permanent funding. If not, it ends forever. Wade's expression grew serious. And there is something else you need to know. 3 weeks ago, someone broke into Colonel Patterson's room at the VA hospital. They did not take anything, but they accessed his laptop, copied files, classified training materials. James felt his stomach drop. Marcus Cole, you know about him? Rebecca filled me in. Wade nodded grimly. Marcus is not just selling techniques to cartels. He is building something bigger. We have intelligence suggesting he is training an entire unit. Foreign nationals, teaching them everything Patterson ever developed. He paused. If those techniques get into the wrong hands, American soldiers will die. We need to stop him. But we also need to prove that what Patterson built has value, that it is worth protecting. Your demonstration today was step one. Training the next generation is step two. And step three? Step three is stopping Marcus before he does something we cannot fix. James looked back at the range. The crowd was dispersing. The AI rifle was being packed away, failure being quietly erased. When do we start? Tomorrow. The recruits are being flown in tonight. They think they are here for advanced training. They do not know about you. They do not know about Patterson's program. They just know they were selected for something special. Wade handed James the folder. These are your students. 6 of the best young shooters in the military. Each one with their own strengths. Each one with their own demons. You have 8 weeks to turn them into legends. James opened the folder. 6 photographs, 6 service records, 6 lives he was about to change forever. He closed the folder. I will need complete autonomy, no oversight, no interference. I train them my way or not at all. Agreed. And when this is over, when Marcus is stopped and the program is finished, I go back to Montana. No questions, no follow-up, no using me for publicity. Wade extended his hand again. You have my word. They shook. James looked at the folder one more time. 6 strangers, 6 soldiers who had no idea what they were about to experience. 6 potential failures or 6 potential legends. Only time would tell. The sun was setting over Fort Benning, the shadows growing long, the air finally cooling from the oppressive heat of the day. James Brennan stood at the edge of the range and watched the light fade from the sky. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the old breed would rise again. And somewhere out there, Marcus Cole was watching, waiting, planning. The war was not over. It was just beginning. The training facility sat in a valley between mountains that had no name on any map. Somewhere in the Appalachian Range, somewhere in Tennessee or North Carolina, or maybe the corner where 3 states met and jurisdiction became a suggestion rather than a rule. The kind of place the government could operate without questions, without oversight, without the burden of public knowledge. James Brennan stood on a ridge overlooking the compound at dawn. The air was thin and cold. October had arrived while he slept, bringing frost that turned the grass silver and made his breath visible in the pale light. Below him, the facility sprawled across 20 acres of cleared forest. 1 main building, 3 barracks, a mess hall, a medical station, and stretching into the distance like a promise or a threat, a shooting range that disappeared into the morning mist. 5 miles. That was what General Wade had told him. 5 miles of carefully measured distance where impossible shots could be attempted without civilian interference. 5 miles of proving ground. James had arrived 2 days ago with Rebecca. They had driven from Fort Benning in a government vehicle with windows tinted dark enough to hide sins. The roads had gotten smaller and rougher as they climbed into the mountains, paved to gravel, to dirt, to something that barely qualified as a trail. By the time they reached the facility, James had lost all sense of where they were. That was the point. Rebecca was still asleep in her quarters. The recruits would not arrive until 800. James had the morning to himself. To think, to prepare, to wrestle with the ghost that had followed him from Montana. He pulled Patterson's journal from his jacket. The leather was warm from being pressed against his body. He had been carrying it everywhere since the hospital, reading and rereading, studying diagrams that showed wind patterns and ballistic trajectories, and the 1,000 small factors that separated a good shot from a perfect one. There was an entry from March 1991, 2 weeks after Robert Cole died. Patterson's handwriting was shaky, emotional. I sent Hawk and Robert on the mission because I believed they could succeed where I failed. The shot was made. The target was eliminated. But the cost was too high. Robert Cole gave his life to protect his sniper. In doing so, he proved that the bond between spotter and shooter is stronger than any technology, stronger than any system. It is built on trust, on sacrifice, on the willingness to die so that another might complete the mission. I will carry the weight of his death until my own comes, but I will also carry the lesson. Some things cannot be taught, they can only be lived. James closed the journal. The sun was rising over the eastern peaks, gold light spilling across the valley. Beautiful and indifferent, the mountains had been here long before men came to kill each other in their shadows. They would be here long after. The sound of vehicles broke the silence. James turned. 3 transport trucks were coming up the access road. Covered beds, military markings. The recruits were arriving early. He made his way down from the ridge. By the time he reached the compound, the trucks had stopped in front of the main building. Soldiers were climbing out, stretching, looking around with the cautious curiosity of people who had been given orders, but no explanations. 6 of them. 3 men, 3 women, ages ranging from early 20s to early 30s, each one carrying a duffel bag and wearing the expression of someone trying to figure out what they had volunteered for. Rebecca emerged from her quarters. She had changed into field fatigues. Her hair was pulled back. All business. She walked to the group and called them to attention. They snapped into formation. Good discipline, good bearing. Patterson had chosen well. James stayed back, watching, learning what he could from how they moved, how they held themselves. The small tells that revealed character. The first was a young man, maybe 28, tall, broad shoulders, athletic build. He stood at the front of the formation with the confidence of someone who had never been told he could not do something. His name tape read Morrison. Beside him stood a woman, early 30s, shorter than Morrison but with a presence that took up more space. She scanned the compound with sharp eyes, calculating, already planning. Her name tape read Santos. The third was another young man, early 20s, baby-faced, eager. He kept glancing at the others like he was worried about measuring up. His name tape read Reeves. The fourth was a woman, late 20s, quiet, self-contained. She stood perfectly still while the others shifted and adjusted. Her eyes were distant, looking at something the others could not see. Her name tape read Kowalski. The fifth was a young man, maybe 29, Asian features, calm, centered. He held himself with a stillness that suggested meditation or long practice at controlling his body. His name tape read Washington. The sixth was another man, late 20s, medium height, unremarkable features except for his eyes. They missed nothing, cataloged everything. The eyes of someone trained to save lives by understanding exactly how fragile they were. His name tape read Park. Rebecca stood before them, her voice carried across the compound. I am Captain Rebecca Cole. I will be your primary liaison for this program. You have been selected from across the military for advanced sniper training. The techniques you will learn here are classified. You will not discuss them with anyone outside this facility. You will not write about them. You will not photograph them. What happens here stays here. Is that understood? A chorus of affirmatives. Yes, ma'am. Understood, ma'am. Rebecca gestured to James. This is your instructor. You will address him as Sergeant Major or Sir. He is a civilian contractor, but his word is law here. What he says goes. No questions, no debates. If you have a problem with that, there is a truck leaving in 5 minutes. You can be on it. She paused. Let that sink in. Anyone? No one moved. 6 sets of eyes found James, sizing him up. An old man in civilian clothes. Gray hair, weathered face. He could see the questions forming. Who was this? What could he possibly teach them that they had not already learned in their respective sniper schools? James walked forward. Slowly, he stopped 10 feet from the formation. My name is James Brennan. You will call me Hawk. Nothing else. I do not care about your rank. I do not care about your prior training. I do not care about your service records or your marksmanship scores or the competitions you have won. He let his eyes move across each face. For the next 8 weeks, you are students, nothing more. Everything you think you know about shooting, forget it. I am going to teach you a different way. The old way. The way men like Colonel Patterson developed over 50 years of putting bullets exactly where they needed to go. Morrison raised his hand. James nodded. Sir, with all due respect, we have all completed advanced sniper training. We know how to shoot. Do you? The question hung in the air. Morrison's confidence flickered. James gestured toward the distant mountains. How far away is that peak? Morrison squinted, calculated. 4,000 meters, maybe 4,500. Wrong. It is 3,847 meters. I know because I arranged it this morning while you were still asleep. He pointed to a flag on the far end of the range. That flag is moving. What does that tell you about the wind at 1,500 meters? Santos answered this time. Northwest wind, approximately 12 miles per hour. Wrong again. The flag tells you the wind at ground level is 12 miles per hour from the northwest. But at 1,500 meters, the wind is coming from the west at 8 miles per hour because of the thermal layer created by the temperature differential between the valley and the ridgeline. He could see confusion spreading across their faces. You think a flag tells you the truth? It does not. Flags lie, grass lies. Even the air you breathe lies. Everything you can see is trying to deceive you about what is really happening between you and your target. James walked closer to the formation. For the next 8 weeks, I am going to teach you how to listen to those lies, how to feel the truth beneath them, how to become so attuned to your environment that you can sense things that should be impossible to sense. Reeves spoke up, young, enthusiastic. Sir, are we going to start shooting today? No. Confusion. Tomorrow? No. When? When you are ready and you are not ready. James turned and started walking toward the main building. Drop your gear into the barracks. You have 10 minutes. Then we meet at the range. No rifles, no equipment, just you. He did not look back to see if they followed orders. They would or they would not. Either way, he would know what kind of students he was working with. 10 minutes later, all 6 stood at the edge of the range. The sun had climbed higher. The frost was melting. Steam rose from the grass in thin wisps. James was waiting for them, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Eyes closed. Sit. They hesitated, then complied. 6 soldiers sitting in the dirt like children at story time. James could feel their skepticism, their confusion. Good. Confusion meant the old certainties were breaking down. Room for new understanding. Close your eyes. More hesitation. But they did it. Tell me what you hear. Washington spoke first. His voice was calm, measured. Wind, birds, a vehicle engine in the distance. Good. What else? Santos next. The grass moving, something rustling in the trees behind us. Good. What else? Silence. They had listed the obvious sounds, the ones any person could hear. James waited. Let the silence stretch. Let them understand that there was more if they chose to listen. Kowalski spoke. Her voice was soft, uncertain. My own heartbeat, my breathing. Better. What else? Park now, the medic, the one trained to notice small details. The ground. I can feel vibration, something moving, far away but getting closer. James opened his eyes. Open yours. They did. He pointed to the access road, 3 miles distant but visible as a pale line cutting through the forest. In approximately 90 seconds, a truck will come down that road. Corporal Park felt the vibration through the earth, and his body translated it into information. Most people would ignore it, write it off as imagination, but it is real. And at extreme distances, being able to sense what you cannot see is the difference between hitting your target and missing. Right on schedule, a supply truck appeared on the access road. The recruits stared at it, then at Park, then at James. Morrison shook his head. That was a guess, a lucky guess. James stood, walked over to Morrison, looked down at him. Stand up? Morrison did. He was taller than James by 3 inches, younger by 30 years, stronger by any physical measure. But James had been doing this since before Morrison was born. Hold out your hands. Palms up. Morrison complied. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of bullets, mixed calibers, mixed weights. He poured them into Morrison's hands. Sort them, by caliber, by grain weight, by manufacturer, eyes closed. Morrison stared at the bullets, then at James. That is impossible. Is it? Or have you just never tried? James closed Morrison's fingers around the bullets. You have 10 seconds. Go. Morrison closed his eyes. His fingers moved over the bullets, feeling, searching for differences. His face showed concentration, frustration. After 10 seconds, James told him to stop. How did you do? Morrison opened his eyes, looked at the bullets, shook his head. I do not know. They all feel the same. James took the bullet back, sorted them in 3 seconds, held them out in separate groups. This is 7.62 NATO, 168 grain, Bombanawa grain, federal manufacturer. This is 7.62 NATO, 175 grain Sierra. This is 338 Lapua, 250 grain Hornady. He dropped them back into Morrison's hand. I know this because I have handled thousands of rounds, tens of thousands. My fingers have memorized the subtle differences in weight and texture and shape. It is not magic. It is not impossible. It is pattern recognition built on repetition. He turned to address the whole group. Everything I am going to teach you is like this. Impossible until it is not. You will spend hours lying in the dirt feeling for vibrations. You will spend days watching mirage patterns until you can predict wind changes before they happen. You will sort ammunition blindfolded until you can identify a round by touch alone. James walked back to his original position. And you will hate every minute of it. You will think I am wasting your time. You will want to quit. Some of you will quit. He let that settle. But those who stay will become something rare, something valuable. You will become snipers who can make shots that others think are impossible. Because you will see what they cannot see, feel what they cannot feel, know what they refuse to learn. Washington raised his hand. Sir, why the old methods? Why not use the technology available to us? It was a good question. A fair question. James had been waiting for it. Because technology fails. Batteries die. Computers crash. Sensors give false readings. When you are 3,000 meters from your target and the mission depends on one shot, you cannot afford to trust a machine. You can only trust yourself. He pulled Patterson's journal from his jacket, held it up. This journal contains 53 years of knowledge. Every lesson Colonel William Patterson ever learned. Every technique he developed. Every secret he discovered. He is dying. Soon this knowledge dies with him unless we preserve it, unless we pass it forward. James opened the journal to a page marked with a strip of cloth. Patterson wrote this in 1974. He was teaching at the sniper school in Fort Benning. One of his students asked him the same question you just asked. Why not use the new laser rangefinders? Why not use the ballistic computers that were just becoming available? He read from the journal. Patterson wrote, a machine can calculate, a machine can measure, but a machine cannot adapt, cannot improvise, cannot feel the difference between what should be and what is. The best snipers are not the ones with the best equipment. They are the ones who can make do with nothing but their skill and their will and their refusal to accept defeat. James closed the journal. That is why we train the old way. Not because it is better in every situation, but because it makes you better in every situation. When you can shoot without technology, you can shoot with anything. You become the weapon. The rifle is just a tool. Silence. The recruits were thinking, processing. Some still skeptical, some beginning to understand. Rebecca appeared from the main building. She walked to James and spoke quietly. We have a problem. James turned away from the recruits, lowered his voice. What kind of problem? Fort Benning just called. Someone broke into the armory last night, stole training materials, ballistic charts, range cards. Nothing that could not be replaced, but the timing is suspicious. James felt his jaw tighten. Marcus, maybe, or someone working for him. The point is, people know about this program. They know we are here. How many people? Too many. The demonstration at Benning was supposed to be low profile, but word got out. Video of your shot has been circulating through military channels. People are asking questions. She glanced at the recruits. We need to accelerate the timeline. Get these kids trained faster. Because if Marcus knows what we are doing, he will try to stop us. James looked back at the 6 soldiers sitting in the dirt. Young, inexperienced, unready. 8 weeks was already pushing it. If we go faster, they will not be ready. If we do not go faster, they might not get the chance to be ready at all. James knew she was right, but that did not make it easier. Fine. We double up the training schedule. 16-hour days instead of 8. But I am not cutting corners. They learn it right, or they do not learn it at all. Rebecca nodded, started to walk away, then stopped. My father, in his letters, he wrote about a mission, February 1991. He said you made an impossible shot. He said it was the proudest moment of his military career. James said nothing. He also wrote that something went wrong, that the mission was compromised, that someone on the inside fed intelligence to the enemy. She turned to face him fully. Was he right? James met her eyes, saw Robert in them, saw the same determination, the same refusal to let things go. Your father suspected there was a leak. He tried to warn command. They did not listen. 2 days later, we walked into an ambush. Who was the leak? I do not know. Your father died before he could identify them. It was not quite a lie. James had suspicions. had spent 33 years wondering. But suspicion was not proof, and proof was something he had never been able to find. Rebecca held his gaze for another moment, then nodded and walked away. James turned back to the recruits. They were watching him, waiting. He clapped his hands together. On your feet, we have work to do. The first week was brutal. James ran them through exercises that seemed to have nothing to do with shooting. They spent hours lying prone, feeling ground vibrations. They sorted ammunition blindfolded until their fingers bled. They watched mirage patterns until their eyes burned and watered. Morrison complained the most. He was used to being the best, used to immediate results. The slow grind of Patterson's methods frustrated him. Santos adapted quickly. She had the technical mind to understand what James was teaching, but she questioned everything. Wanted to know why before she would commit to how. Reeves was enthusiastic but sloppy. He rushed through exercises, trying to get to the shooting part. James had to slow him down repeatedly. Kowalski was quiet. She followed instructions without complaint, but there was a distance to her, like part of her was somewhere else. James recognized the look. He had seen it in the mirror for 33 years. Washington was the natural. He absorbed lessons like a sponge. His grandfather had been a sniper in Desert Storm. The old knowledge had been passed down. He understood intuitively what the others had to learn through repetition. Park was the surprise. As a medic, he had not been expected to excel at shooting, but his training had taught him to notice small details. Changes in breathing, shifts in heart rate, the tiny signals the body gave before it failed. Those same skills translated to reading wind and distance and the 1,000 variables that affected a bullet's flight. By the end of the first week, James could see potential in all of them. Raw and unpolished, but there. The question was whether 8 weeks would be enough to forge that potential into skill. On the 8th day, he finally let them shoot. They assembled at the range at dawn, each with a rifle, standard M24, no fancy optics, no rangefinders, just iron sights and the skills they had been developing. The targets were set at 800 meters, not extreme by any measure, but far enough to separate those who had learned from those who had only pretended to learn. James stood behind them as they took position. You get one shot, no warm-up rounds, no do-overs. The target you see is not where the target is. The wind you feel is not the wind at 800 meters. Everything you think you know is wrong until you prove it is right. Morrison went first. Confident. He settled into position, made his calculations, and fired. Miss, 2 feet left. Santos next, methodical, taking her time, adjusting for factors Morrison had ignored. Miss, 1 foot high. Reeves, excited, rushing. Miss, 3 feet right. Kowalski, distant, going through motions. Miss, 2 feet low. Park, careful, thinking like a medic trying to keep a patient alive. Miss, 6 inches right. Then Washington. He lay down, closed his eyes, breathed. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. Focus, total commitment. He fired. The target rang. Dead center. The others turned to stare. Washington stood slowly. His face showed no emotion, no pride, just the calm satisfaction of a job done correctly. James nodded. That is what I am looking for. The rest of you need to figure out what he did differently. Morrison's face reddened. He got lucky. James walked over to Morrison. Luck is what amateurs call skill they do not possess. Washington made that shot because he listened. He felt the ground. He read the mirage. He trusted what his body was telling him instead of what his eyes wanted him to believe. He turned to address all of them. You have 7 weeks left. By the end, every one of you will be able to make that shot, and shots twice as far. Or you will not be here, simple as that. That night, James sat in his quarters reviewing notes, planning the next day's training. There was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Kowalski standing outside. Sir, can I talk to you? Come in. She entered, stood awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with whatever she had come to say. What is on your mind, Kowalski? She took a breath. My father was a sniper, Marine Corps. He was killed in action 6 years ago. Afghanistan. The details are classified, but I know he died making a long-range shot to protect his team. James waited. Let her find her words. I joined because of him. I wanted to do what he did, be what he was. But every time I look through a scope, all I can think about is that he looked through a scope and then he died. Her voice cracked. I freeze up. I know what I am supposed to do, but I cannot make myself do it. James gestured to a chair. She sat. He poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that had been brewing too long, handed her one. What was your father's name? Sergeant Marcus Kowalski, 1st Marine Division. The name was vaguely familiar. James had heard it somewhere. A citation, maybe. An after-action report. Did he teach you anything before he deployed? She nodded. He taught me to shoot. Basic stuff. Hunting rifles. We would go out to the desert near 29 Palms and he would show me how to read the wind by watching the sand. How to judge distance by the sound of my own voice echoing off rocks. A sad smile crossed her face. He said shooting was like meditation. You had to empty your mind of everything except the target. Let the world disappear until there was just you and the bullet and the place you wanted them to meet. James sipped his coffee. It was bitter. Perfect. Your father was right, but he left out one part. What part? You also have to forgive yourself for surviving when others did not. Kowalski looked up sharply. James set down his cup. I know what it is like to carry someone else's death, to wonder if you deserve to be alive when they are not, to feel like every breath you take is stolen from them. He met her eyes. But your father did not die so you could feel guilty. He died doing what he believed in, and the best way to honor that is to do the same, not to become him, but to become the best version of yourself. Kowalski's eyes were wet. How do you do that? How do you let go? You do not completely, but you learn to carry it differently. You turn the weight into fuel, into motivation, into something that pushes you forward instead of holding you back. She nodded slowly, understanding or at least beginning to. Thank you, sir. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start distance work. 1,500 meters. She stood, walked to the door, paused. Sir, that shot you made at Fort Benning, the one everyone is talking about, was that you letting go or you carrying the weight? James smiled slightly. Both. She left. James sat alone in the quiet. Outside, the mountains stood black against a sky full of stars. Somewhere out there, Marcus Cole was training his own students, teaching them the same techniques, building an army of ghosts who would use Patterson's legacy to kill American soldiers. The phone on James's desk rang. He picked it up. Brennan. It was Wade's voice, tense, urgent. We have a situation. Armed men just hit a supply convoy 20 miles from your location. They knew the route, knew the timing, took ammunition and training materials. James felt his blood go cold. Marcus? We think so. Or people working for him. The point is they are close. Too close. I am sending additional security, but it will take them 12 hours to arrive. We can handle ourselves. I hope so, because if they know about the supply convoy, they might know about the facility. The line went dead. James stood, walked to his locker, pulled out his rifle, checked the chamber, loaded a magazine. Then he walked outside. The compound was quiet, lights off in the barracks. The recruits were sleeping. Rebecca's quarters were dark, everything peaceful. James did not believe in peace anymore. He believed in readiness, in preparation, in the understanding that violence could arrive without warning, and the only defense was to be ready before it did. He walked the perimeter, checking sight lines, identifying approaches, planning fields of fire, old habits from a younger life when survival depended on seeing threats before they materialized. He was halfway through his circuit when he felt it, a vibration in the ground. Vehicles, multiple, moving fast. James keyed his radio. Rebecca, wake up, we have incoming. Her voice came back immediately, alert, no sleep fog. How many? At least 3 vehicles, maybe 4, coming from the North Access Road. I will get the recruits. No, keep them in the barracks. This is not their fight. Hawk, they are soldiers. They are students. Let them stay that way. He could hear her frustration, but she did not argue. James moved to a position overlooking the North Road, prone behind a fallen log. Rifle ready, he could see headlights now. 3 trucks, moving without caution. That told him they were either very confident or very stupid. The truck stopped half a mile from the compound. Lights cut off, doors open, men emerged. James counted 8 of them through his scope, armed, body armor, moving with tactical precision. Not stupid then, confident. They split into 2 groups, 4 moving toward the main building, 4 toward the barracks, coordinated assault, professional. James had to make a choice, shoot now and give away his position, or wait and risk them getting closer to the recruits. He made the choice Patterson would have made, the choice Robert Cole had made 33 years ago in a different desert on a different night. Protect the students. James acquired the first target, center mass, 400 meters, no wind, no mirage, an easy shot. He fired. The man dropped. The others scattered. Confusion. They had not expected resistance, had not expected someone with the skill to hit a target at that distance in near darkness. James worked the bolt, acquired the second target, fired, another hit. The remaining 6 were scrambling now, taking cover, trying to locate the shooter. That was when Rebecca opened fire from the opposite side of the compound. 3-round burst, suppressive, not aimed to kill but to pin them down. Give James time to relocate. He moved, fast, using the terrain, putting a ridge between himself and the attackers. Found a new position, acquired a third target, fired, miss. The man had moved at the last second. Incoming fire, rounds hitting the rocks near James's position. They had spotted his muzzle flash. He rolled left, came up firing. 4th shot, hit, man down. 5 attackers left. They were pulling back, retreating to the trucks. This was not the easy raid they had expected. James let them go, watched through his scope as they dragged their wounded into the vehicles and fled back down the access road. Silence returned to the mountains. James stood, walked back to the compound. Rebecca was waiting. The recruits were pouring out of the barracks, weapons drawn, ready to fight a battle that was already over. Morrison ran up. What happened? Who were they? James ejected the magazine from his rifle, counted rounds, 4 fired, 4 hits, 3 confirmed kills, 1 wounded. Not bad for an old man. People who wanted to send a message. What message? That we are being watched. Rebecca checked her own weapon. She had fired 15 rounds. Cover fire, keeping the attackers' heads down while James did the precision work. This changes things, she said. No, this confirms things. Marcus knows we are here. He knows what we are doing, and he is trying to stop us. Santos stepped forward. Sir, who is Marcus? James looked at Rebecca. She nodded. Permission to share what needed to be shared. Marcus Cole, former Delta Force. He stole classified training materials from Colonel Patterson. He is selling them to anyone who will pay. Cartels, terrorist organizations, enemy nations. He gestured to the darkness where the attack had come from. Those men were probably cartel, hired to slow us down, scare us off, maybe kill a few of us to prove a point. Washington spoke quietly. What do we do? James looked at the 6 recruits. Young faces made older by sudden violence. They had signed up for training. Not combat, not raids in the middle of the night. We keep training. We get better. We prove that what Colonel Patterson had built matters. And when the time comes, we stop Marcus from destroying it. Morrison's jaw set. I am in. Santos nodded. Me too. One by one, the others agreed. Even Kowalski. Especially Kowalski. James felt something shift in his chest. Pride, maybe, or hope. These kids had just been baptized in fire, and instead of running, they were choosing to fight. Maybe Patterson had been right. Maybe the old ways did still matter. Not just the shooting, but the commitment, the refusal to quit when things got hard, the understanding that some things were worth protecting, even at personal cost. Get some sleep, James said. Tomorrow we double the training tempo. If Marcus wants a war, we will give him one, but we will do it on our terms. The recruits dispersed. Rebecca stayed behind. You handled yourself well, James said. So did you. 4 shots, 3 kills. Not bad for someone who claims to be retired. Muscle memory. Or something you never really walked away from. She was right, but James did not want to admit it. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Rebecca spoke again. My father's last letter, he wrote about the mission, about the target at 3,200 meters. He said you made the shot that ended the war, or at least that part of it. James said nothing. He also said there was someone with you, someone who gave the final coordinates, someone he trusted more than anyone else in the world. She turned to face him directly. He was talking about himself, was not he? He was your spotter. He died giving you the information you needed to make that shot. James felt the walls crumbling. The ones he had spent 33 years building. The ones that kept the truth locked away where it could not hurt anyone. Your father was the best spotter I ever worked with. He could read conditions that should have been impossible to read. He saw patterns in chaos. He trusted his instincts even when they contradicted the data. He paused. On February 23, 1991, we were tasked with eliminating a high-value target, a Iraqi officer coordinating artillery strikes. The shot was 3,200 meters. Extreme range, extreme conditions. We had one chance. If we missed, the target would disappear and soldiers would die. Rebecca waited, patient, letting him find the words. Your father gave me the wind call, told me to aim 2 meters right and half a meter high. It felt wrong. The data said something different. But I trusted him. I took the shot. James's voice grew quieter. The bullet flew for 4.8 seconds. I watched it through the scope, watched it curve right, watched it drop, watched it hit exactly where your father said it would. The target went down. The mission was complete. Then what happened? Then the enemy knew our position. We had fired from a ridge overlooking their base. They brought every weapon they had to bear on that ridge. Robert and I had to move, fast. We were running when the artillery started landing. The memory was sharp, clear, like it had happened yesterday instead of 3 decades ago. A shell hit close, shrapnel everywhere. I went down. Robert came back for me, dragged me to cover while rounds were still falling. He saved my life, but in doing so, he exposed himself. The next shell hit 10 feet away. James stopped, could not continue. Rebecca's voice was soft. He died instantly? No, he lived long enough to tell me to complete the mission, to get to the extraction point, to make sure his death meant something. Tears ran down Rebecca's face. She did not wipe them away. Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry it took so long. You carried it alone all these years. That could not have been easy. It was not, but it was what I thought I deserved. Rebecca reached out, placed her hand on his shoulder. My father would not have wanted that. He would have wanted you to live, to teach, to pass on what you learned together. James nodded, unable to speak. They stood together in the darkness. Two people connected by a man who had died believing in something greater than himself. Two people trying to honor that belief by continuing the work. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent, eternal. The mountains watched, silent, patient. And somewhere in the distance, Marcus Cole was planning his next move, building his forces, preparing for a confrontation that was coming, whether anyone wanted it or not. The war had begun, not with declarations or diplomacy, but with bullets in the night and the determination to see it through to whatever end awaited. James Brennan was tired, 58 years old and feeling every one of them. But he was not done. Not yet. There was work to do, students to train, a legacy to protect, and a promise to keep. The old breed would rise one more time, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Because some things could not be allowed to die. Not while men like James Brennan still drew breath. 3 weeks had passed since the night raid. 3 weeks of 16-hour days in training that pushed the recruits beyond anything they had experienced in their previous military careers. 3 weeks of watching raw potential transform into genuine skill. James Brennan stood at the far end of the range in the pre-dawn darkness. The air was cold enough to sting his lungs. November had arrived in the mountains with its usual brutality. Ice formed on the grass overnight. The breath of men and women condensed into clouds that hung in the still air like ghosts waiting to be acknowledged. The targets were set at 2,400 meters, just over 1.5 miles, the kind of distance that separated professionals from amateurs, the kind of distance where wind and temperature and the rotation of the earth itself became factors that could not be ignored. All 6 recruits were in position, prone, rifles ready. They had been lying there for 45 minutes, waiting for the light, learning patience, learning that sometimes the hardest part of being a sniper was the stillness that came before the violence. James watched them through his spotting scope. Morrison had stopped complaining 2 weeks ago. The arrogance had been ground down by repetition and failure, and the slow understanding that he did not know nearly as much as he thought he knew. Now he lay perfectly still, breathing controlled, eyes scanning the mirage patterns with the focus of someone who had finally learned to see. Santos had become the technical leader of the group. She calculated wind speed and temperature differentials with an engineer's precision. But she had also learned to trust her instincts, to feel when something was wrong, even if the numbers said otherwise. That balance between science and art was what Patterson had been trying to teach for 53 years. Reeves had found discipline. The eager kid who wanted to rush everything had learned that speed without accuracy was worthless. He had missed more shots than anyone in the first 2 weeks. Each miss had been a lesson. Each failure had refined his approach. Now he was methodical, careful, still young but no longer careless. Kowalski had stopped freezing. Whatever conversation she had with James that first week had unlocked something in her. She still carried her father's death, probably always would, But she had learned to transform the weight into motivation, into fuel. She was the most improved of the group, the one who had traveled the furthest from where she started. Washington remained the natural. His grandfather's legacy lived in his hands, in the way he read conditions, in the stillness he brought to every shot. James had stopped teaching him weeks ago. Now he just watched Washington work and marveled at what genetics and culture could produce when they aligned properly. Park had discovered that his medical training translated perfectly to sniping. Both required the ability to notice small details, to see patterns in chaos, to make life or death decisions based on incomplete information. He would never be the best shooter in the group, but he would be the most reliable, the one who made the right call when it mattered most. The sun broke over the eastern peaks, gold light spilling across the valley like liquid fire. The temperature began to rise. The frost started to melt. The air began to move. James keyed his radio. Wind is shifting. 3 minutes until optimal conditions. Make ready. 6 rifles adjusted. Tiny movements. Precise. They had learned to anticipate, to prepare, to be ready before the opportunity arrived. James watched the mirage patterns. Watched the flags at intervals along the range. Watched the way grass moved at different distances. Everything was information. Everything was data. The trick was translating it into action before the window closed. 2 minutes, the recruits settled deeper into their positions, becoming part of the earth, roots growing down into the mountain, solid, immovable, the way Patterson had taught James 30 years ago, the way James was teaching them now. 1 minute, breathing slowed, heart rates dropped. 6 minds emptied of everything except target and trajectory and the simple physics of metal traveling through air. 30 seconds. The wind reached equilibrium. The mirage straightened. The thermal layers stabilized. For exactly 20 seconds, conditions would be as good as they were going to get. After that, everything would shift again and the difficulty would triple. Green light, fire when ready. Morrison fired first. The crack of his rifle echoed off the mountains. James tracked the bullet through his scope, watched it fly, watched it curve slightly right as it passed through a crosswind at 1,500 meters. Watched it drop as gravity and air resistance did their work. Impact. 6 inches right of center. Not perfect, but good. Very good. Santos fired next. Her bullet flew truer. Dead center. She had calculated every variable and trusted the math. Sometimes that worked. Reeves fired, high by 4 inches. He had not accounted for the thermal layer properly, but he had made the shot. That was what mattered. Kowalski fired. Center mass, clean, confident. Her father would have been proud. Washington fired. His bullet hit the exact same spot Santos had hit. The 2 holes overlapping. Impossible to tell them apart. That was no accident. That was mastery. Park fired last. Low by 3 inches, but on target. A killing shot by any standard. James lowered his scope, keyed the radio. Good work. All 6 hits at 2,400 meters. 3 weeks ago, none of you could hit at 800. You have earned a rest day. Cheers came through the radio, young voices celebrating success. Hard won, well-deserved. James allowed himself a small smile. They were ready. Maybe not for everything, but for most things, for the demonstration that would determine whether Patterson's legacy lived or died. He was walking back toward the compound when Rebecca intercepted him. Her face was tight, worried. She handed him a tablet. This was uploaded to a cartel website 2 hours ago. James looked at the screen. It was a video. Poor quality, shot from a distance, but clear enough to see what it showed. 6 shooters, prone position, taking turns firing at distant targets. The angle suggested it had been filmed from the ridge above the facility. Someone had been watching them, recording them, documenting their progress. The video ended with text in Spanish. James did not speak Spanish, but Rebecca translated. It says, "The Americans are training. So are we. Soon we will see who learned better." James handed the tablet back. "Marcus, has to be. He is taunting us, showing us that he knows everything we are doing. How is he getting this footage? We have security patrols, motion sensors, cameras covering the approaches." Rebecca shook her head. "I do not know, but someone is feeding him information. Someone who knows our schedules, our training routines, someone inside." The words hung in the cold air. Inside. A mole. A traitor. The same pattern that had gotten Robert Cole killed 33 years ago. James felt something old and familiar stir in his chest. Rage, cold and controlled, the kind that did not explode, the kind that burned steady and hot until it consumed everything in its path. We need to find out who. How? We cannot trust anyone. James thought for a moment. Set a trap. Give different information to different people. See which version leaks. Standard counterintelligence. That could take weeks. We do not have weeks. The final demonstration is in 3 weeks. If Marcus knows our plan, he can sabotage it. She was right. Time was the enemy now. Time and whoever was betraying them. Then we change the plan. Keep the real demonstration secret. Only you and I know the details. Everyone else gets false information. Rebecca nodded slowly, thinking it through. What about the recruits? They train as normal, but we do not tell them about the demonstration until the day before. Reduce the window for leaks. And if one of them is the mole, James had considered that possibility, rejected it, then reconsidered it. Trust was earned, but it could also be faked. He had seen good soldiers turn for money, for ideology, for reasons that made sense only to them. Then we will know soon enough. They walked back to the compound in silence. The sun had climbed higher. The frost was gone. The mountains stood stark and beautiful against the blue November sky, indifferent to human schemes and betrayals. James spent the afternoon in his quarters reviewing Patterson's journal, looking for guidance. For some lesson the old man had learned that might apply to their current situation. He found an entry from 1983, Fort Bragg. Patterson had been teaching a class when classified information started leaking to the press. The entry read, "Betrayal is the oldest wound in warfare. Cain killed Abel. Judas betrayed Christ. Benedict Arnold sold out Washington. It happens because people are weak, because they want things they should not want. Money, power, revenge. The challenge is not preventing betrayal. That is impossible. The challenge is limiting the damage when it inevitably occurs. Trust no one completely, verify everything, and always have a contingency plan." Good advice. James would follow it. There was a knock at his door. James opened it to find General Wade standing outside. The older man looked tired, worn, like he had aged a decade in the 3 weeks since James had seen him last. "Can I come in?" James stepped aside. Wade entered and sat down heavily in the only chair. His breathing was labored. His color was bad. Something was wrong beyond just fatigue. "Are you all right, General?" "No, but that is not why I am here." Wade pulled a file folder from his briefcase, set it on the table. "I have been doing some digging into the 1991 operation, into Robert Cole's death, into the intelligence leak that compromised the mission." James felt his pulse quicken. "What did you find?" "The leak was never officially investigated. The military was busy with the war. Then the war ended, and everyone wanted to forget. The incident was buried in classified archives. No one asked questions. No one pushed for answers." Wade opened the folder. "Until now, I used my old contacts, called in favors, got access to files that should have stayed sealed for another 50 years. He pulled out a document, old, yellowed, a communication intercept from February 1991. This was captured by Signals Intelligence 3 days before Robert Cole died. It is a conversation between an Iraqi officer and someone using an encrypted American military radio. The Iraqi officer is asking for coordinates of coalition sniper positions, and the American is giving them to him. James took the document. Read it. The words were clinical, detached, but the meaning was clear. Someone on the American side had sold out their own people, had given the enemy exact locations of sniper teams, had sentenced men to death for reasons that were not explained in the intercept. Did they identify the American? No, the signal was encrypted. By the time intelligence broke the encryption, the war was over. The investigation was closed. Case file marked inactive. Wade pulled out another document. "But I kept digging, found communication logs from the units operating in that sector, cross-referenced radio frequencies, narrowed down the possible sources." He pointed to a name on the list. There were only 3 people with access to that frequency and that encryption protocol. One was killed in action 2 weeks before the intercept. One was Robert Cole, and the third was a captain named Richard Voss. The name meant nothing to James. "Who is Voss?" Wade's expression darkened. "He is a colonel now. Colonel Richard Voss, works at the Pentagon, Strategic Planning Division. He has been with the military for 35 years. Spotless record, multiple commendations, fast-tracked for promotion to general." James felt the pieces falling into place. a traitor in 1991, still serving, still rising through the ranks, still in a position to do damage. You think Voss is the leak? I think Voss was the leak then, and I think he might be involved now. Because 3 weeks ago, right after your demonstration at Fort Benning, Voss requested a briefing on your training program. Wanted to know details, schedules, methods, participant names. Wade leaned forward. I denied the request, told him it was need to know and he did not need to know. But 2 days later, the armory at Benning was broken into. Training materials were stolen, the same materials Voss had been asking about. James stood, walked to the window. Outside, the recruits were cleaning weapons. Normal activity, normal day. Unaware that their entire program might be compromised by someone sitting in an office 1,000 miles away. Why would Voss help Marcus Cole? I do not know. Maybe Marcus has something on him and proof of the 1991 leak, blackmail, or maybe Voss wants Patterson's techniques for himself. To sell, to use. The motivations do not matter. What matters is that we have a problem. Wade pulled out one more document, a photograph, poor quality, taken from a surveillance camera. It showed two men meeting in what looked like a parking garage. One was younger, muscular, military-bearing even in civilian clothes. The other was older, graying, wearing a suit. This was taken 4 days ago. Arlington, Virginia. The younger man is Marcus Cole. The older man is Richard Voss. James stared at the photograph. The proof was circumstantial. Not enough for a court, but more than enough for him. Does Voss know about this facility? I do not think so. I kept the location classified, compartmentalized the information. But if there is a mole inside feeding Marcus information, and if Marcus is feeding that information to Voss, then yes, he knows. James turned from the window. What do you want me to do? Wade stood, walked to the door, stopped. I want you to finish training the recruits. I want you to make them ready for the demonstration, and I want you to be prepared for Voss to try to stop you. How? I do not know. But men like Voss do not get to where they are by playing fair. He will use every tool at his disposal. Political pressure, military authority. If those do not work, he might use more direct methods. You mean violence? Wade met his eyes. I mean whatever it takes. Voss has spent 33 years covering up his betrayal. He will not let you expose him now. The general left. James stood alone in his quarters. The journal lay open on the table. Patterson's handwriting stared back at him. Wisdom accumulated over 5 decades. All of it meaningless if the men who were supposed to protect it chose to destroy it instead. That night, James called a meeting. Just him and Rebecca. No recruits, no other personnel. He told her everything Wade had shared, showed her the documents, the intercept, the photograph. Rebecca's face went pale when she understood what it meant. Voss killed my father. Voss gave the enemy information that led to your father's death. It is not the same thing, but it is close enough. And now he is working with Marcus. So it appears. Rebecca stood, paced. Her hands were shaking. Not fear, rage, the same cold rage James felt burning in his own chest. We need to expose him, arrest him, make him pay for what he did. With what proof? A signals intercept from 33 years ago that was never officially investigated. A photograph of 2 men talking in a parking garage. A denied briefing request. None of that would hold up in any kind of proceeding. Then what do we do? James thought about Patterson, about what the old man would say, about the lessons written in that journal, about the difference between justice and vengeance, and the fine line that separated them. We finish what we started. We train the recruits. We prove that Patterson's legacy has value, and we make it so successful that Voss cannot bury it, cannot dismiss it, cannot make it disappear. Rebecca shook her head. That is not enough. My father deserves more than that. Your father deserves the truth, and eventually the truth will come out. But right now, we have 6 soldiers depending on us. We have a program that could save lives if we do it right. We have a responsibility that goes beyond our personal desire for revenge. The words were hard. James knew it, but they were also true. And truth was what Robert Cole had died trying to protect. Rebecca sat down, buried her face in her hands. When she looked up again, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I want to be the one who takes him down. When the time comes, when we have real proof, I want to be the one who exposes what he did. You will be. It was a promise James intended to keep. The next morning, James gathered the recruits for a special training exercise. Something different. Something they had not done before. Urban environment simulation, close quarters, moving targets, the kind of shooting that required speed and precision in equal measure. They drove 2 hours to an abandoned facility that had once been a small military base. Empty buildings, broken windows, the perfect place to practice skills that went beyond long-range sniping. James split them into pairs, Morrison and Santos, Reeves and Kowalski, Washington and Park. Each pair would clear a building while James watched and evaluated, not for shooting accuracy, for decision-making, for teamwork, for the ability to function under pressure when the rules changed and improvisation was required. Morrison and Santos went first. They moved through the building with practiced efficiency, covering each other, communicating with hand signals. When they encountered targets, they engaged quickly and effectively. Good work. Professional. Reeves and Kowalski were slower, more cautious, but they were thorough. They checked every corner, every shadow. They did not rush, did not take unnecessary risks. Different approach than Morrison and Santos, but equally valid. Washington and Park were the surprise. Washington took point with the confidence of someone who trusted his partner completely. Park covered him with the precision of someone who understood that mistakes in close quarters were fatal. They moved like water, flowing through the building, smooth, inevitable. When they finished, James realized he was watching something rare. True partnership, the kind that could not be taught, only earned. They were driving back to the facility when Rebecca called on the radio. "Hawk, we have a visitor. You need to get back here now." "Who is it?" "Marcus Cole." James felt his blood turn to ice. "Do not engage. Do not let him near the recruits. I am 10 minutes out." He pushed the vehicle faster. The mountain road was dangerous at this speed, but he did not care. Marcus had come here, to their facility, to the place that was supposed to be secret. That meant the security was compromised beyond anything they had suspected. They arrived to find a black sedan parked in front of the main building. Expensive civilian rental plates. Marcus was standing beside it, waiting, confident, like he owned the place. James stopped the transport truck 20 feet away, told the recruits to stay inside, stepped out alone. Marcus Cole looked like his father. Same build, same bearing, same eyes. But where Robert had been warm, Marcus was cold. Where Robert had been honorable, Marcus radiated corruption. The resemblance was superficial. The differences ran deep. "Sergeant Major Brennan, I have been wanting to meet you." James said nothing, just stood there, studying, calculating, looking for weaknesses. Marcus smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "I know what you are doing here, training a new generation in my father's techniques. Or should I say, Colonel Patterson's techniques. Same thing, really. Dad learned from Patterson, I learned from Dad. All one big happy family. What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. This program you are running, it is pointless. The military does not care about the old ways. They want drones and AI and push-button warfare. You are trying to preserve something that is already dead. If it is already dead, why are you here?" Marcus's smile faded. "Because you made it personal. That shot at Fort Benning, you embarrassed them, made them question their precious technology. And when people start questioning, they start investigating. They start looking into classified programs. They start finding things that should stay buried." Understanding dawned. This was not about Marcus protecting his business. This was about Marcus protecting Voss. The two were connected, the betrayal from 1991 and the betrayal now. Two threads of the same corruption. "You are working for Voss." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "I work for myself, but Colonel Voss and I have mutual interests. He wants this program shut down. I want Patterson's techniques to remain exclusive. We both benefit from you failing." James took a step closer. "Your father died protecting those techniques, died believing they mattered, and you are selling them to the highest bidder." "My father died for nothing." Marcus's composure cracked. "He died because old men like Patterson taught him that honor and duty were more important than survival. He died because he trusted people who did not deserve that trust. He died and left me and Rebecca alone. He died saving my life. I know, and I have hated you for that every day since." The honesty was brutal, raw. Marcus was not hiding behind justifications anymore. He was stating facts. "So this is revenge. This is business. Revenge is just a bonus." Behind James, the transport truck door opened. Rebecca stepped out. Marcus saw her. His expression changed. softened, just for a moment, and then hardened again. "Hello, little sister." "Marcus." They stared at each other across the dusty compound, siblings separated by choices and time, and the different ways they had processed their father's death. "You should not be here," Rebecca said. "You are a wanted man, dishonorable discharge, theft of classified materials, selling military secrets. I could arrest you right now. You could try, but you would have to explain how you knew I was here, and that would expose this facility, expose the program, expose everything you and the old man here have been trying to build." He was right. Arresting Marcus would mean revealing the program, would give Voss ammunition to shut it down, would waste everything they had accomplished. Marcus knew it, used it. "I came here to make an offer, stop the program, walk away. I will make sure you and Rebecca are taken care of. Money, new identities if you want them, a chance to disappear and live quiet lives. And if we refuse, then people get hurt, starting with your students. I have men watching this facility. I know their schedules, their routines. I know where they go when they leave here, who they call, who they love." It was a threat, clear, unmistakable. James felt his hand drift toward his sidearm. 30 years of muscle memory screaming at him to eliminate the threat, to protect the students, to end this now. But he did not draw, did not fire, because Marcus was Robert's son. And no matter what he had become, that still meant something. Rebecca had no such hesitation. She pulled her sidearm, aimed it at Marcus. "Get off this facility, now." Marcus raised his hands, not scared, just complying, like he had expected this. "Okay, I am leaving, but think about my offer. You have 3 weeks until the demonstration, 3 weeks to decide if this is worth dying for." He got in his car, started the engine, drove away slowly, deliberately, showing he was not afraid. When he was gone, Rebecca lowered her weapon. Her hands were shaking. "I should have shot him." "No, you should not have." "Why not?" "He threatened us, threatened the students. He deserves to die." James took her weapon, safed it, handed it back. "Because he is your brother, and because killing him would not stop Voss, would not solve anything. It would just create more problems." Rebecca's eyes were wet with angry tears. "I hate him. I hate what he has become." "I know, but hate is a luxury we cannot afford right now." James turned to the transport truck. The recruits were watching through the windows. They had heard everything, seen everything. There was no point hiding it from them anymore. He opened the door. "Everyone out. We need to talk." The 6 soldiers climbed down, formed up, waiting for explanation, for orders, for some indication of what was happening. James told them the truth, all of it, about Marcus, about Voss, about the 1991 betrayal and the current threat, about the fact that they were not just training to prove a concept. They were training to fight a war that had been going on for 33 years. When he finished, Morrison spoke. "So we are targets. Marcus and Voss want to stop the program, and they are willing to hurt us to do it." "Yes. What do we do?" James looked at each of them. Young faces, determined, scared but not running. They had earned the right to choose. "You can leave. No shame, no consequences. This is not what you signed up for. You volunteered for training, not war." Silence. The wind moved through the trees. A bird called from somewhere in the distance. The mountains watched. Santos stepped forward. "I am staying. My country needs this program, needs what we are learning. I will not let corrupt officers and traitors destroy it." Morrison next. "I am in. Marcus threatened us. That was a mistake." Reeves, Kowalski, Washington, Park. One by one they stepped forward, committed, united. James felt something he had not felt in years. Pride. Not in himself, in them, in what they were becoming. "Then we finish this. We train harder. We get better. And when the demonstration comes, we prove to the world that the old ways still work. That honor still matters. That sacrifice still has meaning." He pulled Patterson's journal from his jacket, held it up. "This journal represents 53 years of knowledge. Knowledge paid for in blood and sweat and the lives of good men. We owe it to them to preserve it, to pass it forward, to make sure their sacrifices were not wasted." Washington spoke quietly. "My grandfather told me something before he died. He said the hardest battles are not fought with bullets. They are fought with choices, with the decision to stand when everyone else is running, with the refusal to surrender what you believe in." He met James's eyes. "I think this is one of those battles. James nodded. Then let us make our grandfathers proud. That night, James could not sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, thinking about Robert Cole, about Patterson, about all the men who had come before and the legacy they had left behind. He got up, walked outside. The stars were brilliant, cold, distant. The same stars men had used to navigate for thousands of years before GPS and satellites made the skill obsolete. Rebecca was sitting on the steps of the main building. She looked up as he approached. Could not sleep either? Too much on my mind. James sat beside her. They were quiet for a while, comfortable silence between two people who understood each other. My father's last letter, Rebecca said. He wrote something I did not understand until today. She pulled the letter from her pocket, unfolded it. The paper was thin from years of handling. He wrote, if something happens to me, tell James that he was right. Tell him the shot was good. Tell him I would make the same choice again. She looked at James. What did he mean? James took a breath. This was the last secret, the last piece of truth he had been carrying. The mission on February 23rd, the 3,200-meter shot. I did not want to take it. The conditions were wrong, the intel was questionable. I told your father we should abort. Wait for a better opportunity. What did he say? He said the target would not wait, that soldiers would die if we did not act, that this was what we trained for, so I took the shot. James's voice grew quiet. After it was over, after the artillery started falling and your father was dying, I asked him if it was worth it, if one target was worth his life. What did he say? He said yes, because the mission was bigger than either of us, because duty required sacrifice, because that was what it meant to be a soldier. Rebecca folded the letter, put it away. He was right, I know, but that does not make it easier to live with. They sat together under the stars. Two people connected by a ghost, by a legacy, by the understanding that some debts could never be repaid, only honored. Morning came too soon. James gathered the recruits for the final phase of training. Long range, extreme conditions, the shots that would determine if they were ready. The targets were set at 3,000 meters, farther than they had ever attempted, farther than most snipers ever attempted. The kind of distance that required everything Patterson had taught, everything James had passed forward. The conditions were brutal, wind gusting to 20 miles per hour, temperature dropping, clouds moving in. In 2 hours it would rain. They had to make the shots before then or wait for better weather. James gave them the parameters, explained the challenges, showed them the mirage patterns in the thermal layers and the 1,000 small factors that would affect their bullets. Then he stepped back and let them work. Morrison missed his first shot, adjusted, missed the second. On the third, he stopped calculating and started feeling. The bullet flew true. Impact. Santos made her shot on the second attempt. Pure math. Pure calculation. It worked because she trusted it completely. Reeves needed 4 tries. Each miss teaching him something. Each adjustment bringing him closer. When the bullet finally hit, he lay there for a long moment, not celebrating, just grateful. Kowalski hit on her first try. No hesitation, no fear. Her father's daughter in the ways that mattered most. Park struggled. 5 attempts. 6. The wind kept changing. The conditions kept deteriorating. But he did not quit. On the 7th shot, he found the target, proved that persistence could overcome natural limits. Washington saved his shot for last. He lay behind his rifle for 20 minutes, waiting, feeling, reading patterns invisible to the others. Then he fired once, dead center, perfect. James walked to each of them, shook their hands, told them what they had just accomplished, told them they were ready. But ready for what, he did not say, because he did not know yet. The demonstration was 3 weeks away. And somewhere out there, Voss and Marcus were planning their countermove. The war was far from over. It was only beginning. The final demonstration was scheduled for December 15th at a military range outside Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Neutral ground. Public enough that Voss could not make it disappear quietly. Remote enough that extreme distance shooting would not endanger civilians. The perfect stage for proving that Patterson's legacy still mattered. James Brennan stood in the operations center 3 days before the event. Maps covered the walls. Satellite imagery, topographical charts, weather predictions, every detail planned, every contingency considered, or so he hoped. Rebecca entered carrying a tablet. Her expression told him the news was not good before she spoke. Voss just filed an official complaint with the Joint Chiefs. He is claiming this demonstration violates safety protocols, that we have not secured proper authorization, that the recruits are not qualified for public exhibition. James felt his jaw tighten. Can he stop it? He is trying, but General Wade has friends too. They are pushing back, arguing that this is a legitimate training evaluation, that Voss has no authority to interfere. What are our chances? Rebecca set down the tablet. 50-50. If the Joint Chiefs side with Voss, the demonstration gets canceled. Everything we have worked for ends. James walked to the window. Outside, the recruits were running drills, practicing the shots they would make in 3 days. Morrison and Santos working together. Reeves coaching Kowalski on wind reading. Washington and Park discussing mirage patterns. They had become a team, a unit, something more than the sum of individual skills. We need insurance, James said. What kind of insurance? The kind that proves Voss is dirty. That shows his objections are not about safety, they are about covering up his own crimes. Rebecca nodded slowly. Wade gave us the signals intercept from 1991, the communication between Voss and the Iraqi officer. But it is not enough, not by itself. Then we need more. We need proof that Voss is working with Marcus now. Recent proof, undeniable proof. How do we get that? James turned from the window. We make Marcus come to us. We give him an opportunity he cannot refuse. The plan was risky, probably stupid, but it was all they had. James sent word through channels that were certain to reach Marcus. A message designed to provoke, to challenge, to make it personal. The message was simple. Come to Fort Campbell. Watch us succeed where your father failed. See what real snipers can do when they are not being sabotaged by traitors. It was bait, crude and obvious. But James was betting that Marcus's ego would not let him resist, that the chance to humiliate them publicly would be too tempting to ignore. 2 days before the demonstration, the response came. Not from Marcus directly, from an encrypted email sent to Rebecca's official military account. The message read, I will be there, and I will bring friends. This ends at Campbell. James showed the message to General Wade. He is coming, and he is bringing backup, probably cartel shooters, the ones he has been training. Wade's face was grim. If Marcus attacks during the demonstration, people will die. We should cancel, find another way. There is no other way. Voss has boxed us in. If we cancel, he wins. The program dies. Patterson's legacy dies. Everything your generation built becomes a footnote in a classified file. Wade was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I will arrange security, extra personnel, counter-sniper teams. We will make Fort Campbell as secure as possible. That is not enough. Marcus knows our security protocols. He knows how military bases operate. He will find a way in. Then what do you suggest? James pulled Patterson's journal from his jacket, opened it to a page he had marked weeks ago. An entry from 1988, Panama. Patterson had written about asymmetric warfare, about fighting enemies who did not follow conventional rules. We do not try to keep him out. We let him come, control the battlefield on our terms, make him think he has the advantage, then we turn it against him. Wade studied James's face. You are talking about using the recruits as bait. I am talking about trusting them to do what they have been trained to do. Marcus will position his shooters to disrupt the demonstration. We position ours to counter. When he makes his move, we are ready. And if you are wrong, if the students are not ready, then I will have failed them, failed Patterson, failed Robert Cole, but I do not think I am wrong. Wade stood, extended his hand. God help us all if you are. They shook. The night before the demonstration, James gathered the recruits for a final briefing. He did not sugarcoat the situation, did not hide the danger. They deserved the truth. Tomorrow you will make shots at ranges between 2,000 and 3,500 meters. You will do it in front of military observers, Pentagon officials, possibly news media. The pressure will be intense. He paused. But there is something else you need to know. We have intelligence suggesting that hostile forces may try to disrupt the demonstration. Former military, well-trained, possibly as skilled as you are. Morrison spoke first. You mean Marcus Cole and his cartel shooters? James nodded. We believe he will position snipers around the range. Their objective will be to make you miss, to sabotage the demonstration, to prove that traditional training cannot compete with their methods. Santos frowned. How will they make us miss? Interfere with our equipment? Tamper with ammunition? Possibly. Or they might take a more direct approach. The implication hung in the air. Direct approach meant violence, meant shooting at the shooters, meant combat. Kowalski's voice was steady. You are saying they might try to kill us. I am saying we need to be prepared for anything. Washington raised his hand. Sir, why are we doing this? Why take the risk? If Marcus wants to disrupt the demonstration, why give him the opportunity? It was a fair question, the kind that deserved an honest answer. Because running away does not solve anything. Because if we cancel now, Voss and Marcus win. The program dies. Everything we have learned becomes classified and buried. The next generation never gets the chance to learn what you have learned. James walked closer to the group. But more than that, because your grandfathers and fathers fought for something they believed in. They put themselves in danger to protect people they would never meet. They sacrificed so that others could live in peace. That is what it means to serve. Not just to follow orders, but to stand up when it matters. Even when it is hard. Even when it is dangerous. He pulled out Patterson's journal. Colonel Patterson spent 53 years perfecting his craft. He trained hundreds of soldiers, saved countless lives by teaching people to shoot with precision and purpose. He is dying, and before he goes, he wants to know that his life's work will continue. James closed the journal. Tomorrow you have a chance to give him that gift, to show the world that the old ways still work, that honor and skill and sacrifice still matter. But I will not force you. If anyone wants to walk away, now is the time. Silence. The recruits looked at each other, some nervous, some determined, all thinking. Then Park stood. I am staying, not because I am the best shooter, I am probably the worst, but because I believe in what we are doing. I believe that some things are worth fighting for. Morrison stood next. I started this program thinking I already knew everything. I was wrong. You taught me that being good is not enough. You have to be willing to suffer to become great. I am not walking away from that lesson. One by one, the others stood. Santos, Reeves, Kowalski, Washington. 6 soldiers choosing to face danger rather than run from it. James felt something swell in his chest, pride, gratitude, the knowledge that he had done something right. That Patterson's legacy would live in these young warriors. Get some rest. Tomorrow we make history. They dispersed, all except Park. He lingered near the door, looking like he wanted to say something but could not find the words. What is on your mind, Park? The young medic took a breath. Sir, there is something I need to tell you, something I should have told you weeks ago. James felt warning bells go off in his head. The tone, the body language, the guilt written across Park's face. Go ahead. When I was selected for this program, I was contacted by someone from the Pentagon, a colonel. He said his name was Voss. The world tilted. James kept his expression neutral, waited. He told me this program was experimental, that there were concerns about safety and oversight. He asked me to keep him informed, to report on training methods, progress, any issues that might arise. Park's voice cracked. I did not know he was dirty. I thought I was helping, providing legitimate oversight. But the questions he asked, the details he wanted, it was not about safety, it was about intelligence. James said nothing, just stared, processing. I gave him everything. Training schedules, your methods, the recruit's progress, even the location of this facility. I am the leak. I am the reason Marcus knew we were here. I am the reason the cartel attacked. I am the reason people almost died. Park's hands were shaking. I am sorry, sir. I know sorry does not fix anything, but I needed you to know before tomorrow, before we go into combat, because if something happens, if someone gets hurt because of what I did, you need to know it was my fault. James walked to the door, closed it, turned back to Park. How long have you known Voss was dirty? 3 weeks, since General Wade told us about the 1991 betrayal. I put the pieces together, realized I had been feeding information to the same man who got Captain Cole's father killed. Why did you not tell me immediately? Because I was ashamed, because I was afraid, because I thought if I told you, you would kick me out of the program. And I did not want to leave. This is the best thing I have ever done, the most important thing. James studied Park's face, saw genuine remorse, genuine anguish. The kid had made a mistake, a bad one, but he had not done it out of malice. He had done it out of ignorance, out of trust in the wrong people. What has Voss asked you to report in the last 3 weeks? Nothing. I stopped communicating with him after Wade's briefing, cut off all contact. Does he know you stopped? I do not know. Maybe. I have not responded to his messages. He must realize something is wrong. James thought for a moment, calculating, planning. Here is what you are going to do. You are going to send Voss one more message tonight. You are going to tell him that tomorrow's demonstration is a setup, that we know about Marcus, that we have counter-sniper teams positioned to take out his shooters. Park blinked. But that is not true. We do not have counter-sniper teams. Voss does not know that, and if he warns Marcus, if Marcus repositions his people based on false intelligence, we gain an advantage. Understanding dawned on Park's face. You want me to feed Voss disinformation? I want you to do what you should have been doing from the beginning, using his trust in you against him. Park nodded slowly. What do I tell him? Tell him our counter-snipers will be positioned on the ridges east and west of the range. Tell him we expect Marcus to attack from the north. Tell him we have thermal imaging and drone surveillance covering every approach. None of that is true. Exactly, but if Marcus believes it, he will avoid those positions. He will come from a different direction. One we can actually cover with the resources we have. James opened the door. Send the message in 1 hour. Make it sound urgent, like you are risking everything to warn him. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow you prove that one mistake does not define you. Park's eyes were wet. Thank you, sir. I will not let you down again. I know you will not. After Park left, James sat alone in the operations center. He should have been angry, should have felt betrayed, but all he felt was tired. Tired of secrets and laws and the endless chess game with people who put power above honor. Rebecca entered, saw his expression. What happened? James told her. Everything. Park's confession, the messages to Voss, the plan to use the leak against them. Rebecca's face went through several expressions. Anger, disbelief, then grudging respect. That is actually brilliant. Using their own spy to feed them false information. It is risky. If Voss does not believe Park, if Marcus sees through the deception, we will be worse off than before. But if it works, we control the battlefield. We know where Marcus will not be, which tells us where he will be. James nodded. North Ridge is the obvious choice for him to avoid if he thinks we are watching it, so he will come from the south, through the valley, closer range, more exposure. But he will think it is safe because we said we were not watching it. Rebecca pulled out a map of Fort Campbell, marked positions. If he comes from the south, he will set up here and here, high ground overlooking the demonstration area, approximately 1,800 to 2,200 meters from the targets. Good range for disruption, close enough to interfere, far enough to avoid immediate detection. So we position our people there first. Wait for Marcus to arrive. Take him when he does. James studied the map. It could work if Park sold the deception, if Voss believed it, if Marcus took the bait. Too many ifs. But sometimes that was all you had. Make it happen, but keep it quiet. Only people who absolutely need to know. Rebecca started to leave, stopped. Do you trust Park now, after what he did? James thought about it. Trust was earned. Look, sometimes earned again through actions rather than words. I trust that he wants to make it right. Whether that is the same as trust, I do not know yet, but I am giving him the chance to find out. Morning arrived cold and clear. December in Kentucky, the kind of day that started below freezing and never quite warmed up. Perfect shooting weather, no heat mirage, minimal wind, conditions that would let skill shine through. The demonstration was scheduled for 1,000 hours. James and the recruits arrived at Fort Campbell at 0600, 4 hours to set up, to range their rifles, to prepare mentally for what was coming. The range stretched across 3 miles of open terrain. Targets set at 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, and 3,500 meters. Each recruit would attempt one shot at each distance, 24 shots total, 24 chances to prove Patterson's methods worked. But James knew the shooting was secondary. The real test would be how they performed when Marcus made his move, when the demonstration turned into combat, when the line between training and war disappeared. Rebecca had positioned her people on the South Ridge before dawn, concealed observation posts, waiting, watching for Marcus and his cartel shooters. If the deception worked, they would have advance warning, a chance to neutralize the threat before it materialized. If it did not work, people would die. By 900, the observers began to arrive, military officers in dress uniforms, Pentagon officials in suits, a handful of journalists with cameras and recorders. More people than James had expected. More witnesses to either triumph or disaster. General Wade appeared at James's side. Voss is here. I saw him arrive 10 minutes ago. James scanned the crowd. Found him. Colonel Richard Voss, 72 years old but still projecting authority. Gray hair, severe expression. The face of a man who had spent a lifetime giving orders and expecting them to be followed. He was talking to a group of officers, making his case, trying to undermine the demonstration before it began. Is he alone? He has aides, staff officers, but no obvious security. If he is working with Marcus, he is keeping it subtle. James watched Voss for another moment, then turned away, focusing on what he could control. The recruits, the shots, the mission. At 0950, the range officer called the demonstration to order. Explain the parameters. 4 targets at extreme ranges, 6 shooters, 1 shot per target. Success defined as hits within a 12-inch circle. The same standard used for conventional sniper qualification, but at distances 3 times farther. The observers took their positions on the viewing platform. Voss among them, watching, calculating, probably hoping for failure. James gathered the recruits for final words. You know what to do. You have made these shots 100 times in training. Nothing changes just because people are watching. He paused. Remember what Patterson taught. The bullet does not lie. Only the shooter lies to themselves. Trust your training, trust each other, and when it is over, we celebrate together. Morrison stepped forward, extended his hand. James shook it. Then Santos, Reeves, Kowalski, Washington, Park. 6 warriors ready to prove their worth. The shooting began at 1000 hours exactly. Morrison went first. Target at 2,000 meters. He settled into position, controlled his breathing, read the minimal wind, fired. The bullet flew for 2.4 seconds, hit 6 inches right of center. Good shot, not perfect, but well within standard. Santos took the 2,500-meter target, methodical, calculating every variable. Her shot was perfect. Dead center. The observers murmured, impressed. Reeves attempted 3,000 meters, his first true extreme range shot in front of an audience. The pressure showed. He took 3 minutes to prepare. Finally fired, hit 4 inches low, still good, still within standard. Kowalski lined up for 3,000 meters as well. Her shot was quick, confident, center mass, her father's daughter. Washington took 3,500 meters, the longest shot of the demonstration, the one that would either silence critics or confirm their doubts. He lay behind his rifle for 5 minutes, not hesitating, waiting, feeling for the perfect moment. Then he fired. The bullet was in the air for 3.8 seconds. James tracked it through his spotting scope, watched it arc, watched it climb and fall and drift slightly right, and then correct as it passed through different wind layers. Impact, 3 inches left of center, at 3,500 meters. In front of witnesses, undeniable proof that the old ways worked. The observers erupted, some cheering, some questioning. Voss's face was stone. He knew what this meant, knew that his argument against the program had just been demolished by a 29-year-old soldier using 50-year-old techniques. Park was the last shooter, the one with the most to prove, not to the observers, to himself. He took position for the 3,000-meter target, the same distance Washington had mastered, the distance that required everything Patterson had taught. James watched through his scope, saw Park's hands shaking slightly, saw him close his eyes, breathe, center himself, the way he had been taught. Park opened his eyes, acquired the target, made his adjustments, fired. The shot went wide, 2 feet right, a complete miss. The observers went quiet. First failure of the demonstration, proof that the methods were not foolproof, that human error still existed. Park lay still for a moment, then rose, walked back to the group. His face showed no emotion, but James could see the disappointment, the self-recrimination. James met him halfway. That was not your shot. You know it. I know it. Something was wrong. Park nodded. The rifle felt off, like the scope had shifted, but I checked it this morning. It was perfect. James felt ice form in his stomach. Let me see the rifle. Park handed it over. James examined the scope mount. The screws were loose, not much, just enough to throw off the zero, just enough to make any shot at distance impossible. Someone had sabotaged it, recently, within the last hour. James looked at the observers. At Voss, the colonel was watching, waiting. His expression gave nothing away, but James knew. Voss or one of his people had done this. had tampered with Park's rifle to create doubt, to make it look like the program was unreliable. Rebecca appeared at James's side. Her face was urgent. "We have movement on the South Ridge, multiple contacts, armed, moving into position." It was happening. Marcus and his shooters, right where they expected, right where the deception had led them. How many? At least 6, maybe more. They are setting up in the exact positions we predicted. James handed Park's rifle back. "Fix the scope. You are going to get another shot." "Sir, the demonstration is over. We already finished." "The demonstration is not over until I say it is over." James walked to the viewing platform, addressed the observers directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. Hostile forces have been detected on the South Ridge. Armed individuals preparing to interfere with this demonstration. For your safety, I am asking you to move to the secure area behind the range building." Confusion. Questions. Voss stood. "What hostile forces? This is a military installation. There are no hostiles here." James met his eyes. "Then you will not mind if we investigate. General Wade, please escort the observers to safety. This will only take a few minutes." Wade understood, began moving people toward the building. Most complied. Voss did not move. "This is absurd. You are manufacturing a crisis to cover up the failure we just witnessed. The failure you arranged. The rifle was sabotaged. Someone loosened the scope mount on Corporal Park's weapon between this morning and the demonstration." Voss's expression did not change. "That is a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I have the rifle. I have the loose screws. I have the fact that you have been trying to shut down this program for months. That is enough proof for me." James turned to the recruits. "Mount up. We have hostiles on the South Ridge, 6+ tangos, armed and preparing to engage. Rules of engagement are defensive. Fire only if fired upon. But make no mistake, this is combat. This is what you train for." The recruits moved immediately. No hesitation, no questions. They grabbed their rifles and headed for the vehicles that would take them to the ridge. Voss stepped into James's path. "You are making a mistake. Stand down. That is an order." "You are not my commanding officer. I am a civilian contractor. Your orders mean nothing to me." James pushed past him. Voss grabbed his arm. "Bad move." James spun, broke the grip, got in Voss's face. "You got Robert Cole killed. You sold out American soldiers to save your own career. You have been lying for 33 years, and today it ends." Voss's composure finally cracked. For just a second, James saw fear in the old man's eyes. "You have no idea what you are talking about. I have the signals intercept from 1991. The communication between you and the Iraqi artillery commander. I have photographs of you meeting with Marcus Cole. I have testimony from Corporal Park about the intelligence you asked him to gather. I have everything I need to destroy you." James stepped back. "You can run. You can lawyer up. You can try to cover this like you covered the rest. But it will not work this time because too many people know. Too many people care. And the truth always comes out eventually." He left Voss standing there, walked to the vehicles, climbed in with the recruits. They drove toward the South Ridge at speed. Rebecca was already there, concealed in an observation post with thermal imaging. She marked positions on a tablet as James arrived. 6 confirmed hostiles, 2 more possibles. They have set up exactly where we predicted. Ranges between 1,800 and 2,200 meters from the demonstration area. James studied the positions. Professional setup, good fields of fire, proper spacing. Marcus had trained these people well. "Can we identify Marcus?" "Not yet. They are using camouflage and concealment, but one of them is directing the others, giving orders, probably him." James turned to the recruits. "Here's the situation. Those shooters were positioned to disrupt the demonstration, to make you miss your shots, to sabotage the program. They failed because we finished before they were ready, but they are still there, still armed, still a threat." He pointed to the positions Rebecca had marked. "We are going to neutralize them, not kill them unless necessary, but remove them as a threat. You will work in pairs. Each pair takes one position. On my signal, you call out to them. Give them a chance to surrender. If they do not comply, you engage." Morrison raised his hand. "Sir, these are human beings, not targets. Are we really going to shoot them?" It was the question James had been waiting for. The moment when training became reality. When abstract concepts like duty and sacrifice took on flesh and blood consequences. "I hope it does not come to that. I hope they choose to surrender. But if they do not, if they choose to fight, then yes, We engage, because that is what soldiers do. We protect people who cannot protect themselves, even when it is hard, even when it costs us something. James pulled Patterson's journal from his jacket, opened it to the final page, the one Patterson had written the day before he died. Patterson wrote this 2 months ago. He wrote, "I have spent my life teaching men to kill at distance, to remove threats before they materialize, to protect the innocent by eliminating the guilty. It is a heavy burden, one that never gets lighter. But it is necessary, because evil exists, and good men must be willing to stand against it, even when the cost is high." James closed the journal. "We are the good men Patterson was writing about. This is our moment to stand. Are you ready?" 6 voices answered as one. "Yes, sir." They moved into position, Morrison and Santos taking the western approach, Reeves and Kowalski the eastern, Washington and Park the center. James and Rebecca stayed in overwatch, coordinating, directing, ready to intervene if things went wrong. The recruits crept through the underbrush, silent, professional. Everything James had taught them about fieldcraft coming into play. They reached their assigned positions without being detected. James keyed the radio. "All teams in position. Stand by for my signal." He waited, watching the cartel shooters through his scope. They were still focused on the demonstration area, still waiting for shots that would never come, unaware that 6 American snipers were now within range, unaware that the trap had closed around them. "Execute." 3 voices called out simultaneously in Spanish and English. "United States military, you are surrounded. Lay down your weapons and stand with your hands visible." For a moment, nothing happened. The cartel shooters froze, confused. Then one of them raised his rifle, pointed it toward Morrison's position. Morrison fired. 1 shot, center mass. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. The remaining cartel shooters scattered. Some tried to flee. Some tried to fight. The recruits engaged with precision, each shot deliberate, each trigger pull a decision made with full knowledge of its consequences. Santos hit her target in the shoulder. Wounding, not killing, Reeves and Kowalski both fired simultaneously at a man trying to flank them. Both bullets hit. The man went down. Washington faced the hardest choice. His target was running, fleeing toward the tree line. An easy shot in the back. Cowardly but effective. Washington held his fire, let the man run, chose mercy over certainty. Park's target surrendered, dropped his rifle, raised his hands, chose life over loyalty. Park covered him, but did not fire. In 90 seconds, it was over. 1 hostile dead, 3 wounded, 2 surrendered, the rest fled into the forest. James and Rebecca moved in to secure the area. The recruits held their positions, covering, professional. They had just engaged in their first combat, had fired at human beings instead of paper targets, and they had performed flawlessly. James checked the wounded, administered first aid, called for medical evacuation. Then he searched for Marcus, for the one person who should have been there but was not. Rebecca found him, or rather, found his position. Empty, abandoned. Marcus had been there. The ground showed boot prints, brass casings, evidence of observation and preparation. But he had left before the confrontation, had seen the trap closing and slipped away. "He knew," Rebecca said. "He knew we were coming. Probably left his men here as a distraction while he escaped." James nodded. It made sense. Marcus was many things, but he was not stupid. He would not risk capture when he could live to fight another day. But something about the scene bothered James. He knelt down, examined the position more carefully, found a small object half buried in the dirt, a USB drive, deliberately left, obviously meant to be found. James picked it up. "What is that?" Rebecca asked. "Either information or a virus, maybe both." They returned to Fort Campbell to find General Wade waiting. His face was grim. "Voss is gone. He left immediately after you drove off. I tried to detain him, but he has friends. Made some calls. Had lawyers here within 10 minutes. They threatened lawsuits, constitutional violations, the whole 9 yards." James was not surprised. "Let him run. We have what we need." He held up the USB drive. "Marcus left this. Whatever's on it, he wanted us to find it." They took the drive to a secure computer. Isolated, not connected to any network, safe to examine without risking wider contamination. The drive contained one file, a video. James played it. Marcus's face filled the screen. He was sitting in what looked like a hotel room. Neutral background, nothing identifying. "Hello, Hawk." If you are watching this, it means my men failed. Means your students succeeded. Congratulations. You trained them well. Marcus smiled. It was not friendly. But this is not over. Not by a long shot. You think exposing Voss will make a difference. It will not. He is one man, one corrupt officer. There are 100 more just like him. 1,000. The system is broken. You cannot fix it by winning one demonstration. He leaned forward. I am offering you one last chance. Walk away, take your students, go back to Montana, live quiet lives, or stay and fight and watch everyone you care about die. Marcus's expression hardened. Because I am not like you. I do not follow rules. I do not honor codes. I do what works. And what works is being willing to do things you will not do. Hurt people you will not hurt. Cross lines you will not cross. He stood, walked toward the camera. 3 weeks. You have 3 weeks to decide. After that, I come for you. I come for Rebecca. I come for every student you trained, and I will not stop until everything you built is ashes. The video ended. The room was silent. Then James spoke. Copy this file. Send it to every news organization in the country, every military oversight committee, every journalist who covers the Pentagon. Rebecca blinked. Why, it's a threat. Evidence of conspiracy. But it is also exactly what Marcus wants. Attention, publicity, a platform. Exactly. And when the world sees this video, they will ask questions. Who is Marcus Cole? Why is he threatening a military training program? What does he know about Colonel Voss? The investigation we could not force will happen naturally. James ejected the USB drive. Marcus thinks he is threatening us. What he is actually doing is exposing himself, making himself a target. That was his mistake. General Wade nodded slowly. I will handle the distribution. Make sure the right people see it. Do it tonight, before Voss has time to contain it. Wade left. James turned to the recruits. They were standing together, still processing what had happened, still coming to terms with the fact that they had shot people, that those people had bled and fallen and maybe died because of their actions. You did well today. All of you. You made hard choices, pulled triggers that could not be unpulled. That weight will stay with you. It should. Good soldiers feel the cost of what they do. James walked to each of them, shook hands, looked them in the eyes. But you also saved lives. Stopped people who would have killed innocent soldiers. Protected a program that will teach others what you learned. That matters. Remember that when the doubt comes. Park stepped forward. Sir, I want to apologize for being the leak, for endangering everyone. I know I can never fully make up for it, but I want you to know I will spend the rest of my career trying. James put his hand on Park's shoulder. You already started. That shot at the 3,000-meter target, the rifle was sabotaged, but you did not make excuses, did not blame the equipment. You owned the failure and moved on. That takes strength. I missed. This time. You will not miss next time, because now you know what is at stake. Now you understand that every shot matters. That is a lesson some soldiers never learn. Park nodded, gratitude and relief mixing on his face. The demonstration was officially over. The observers had witnessed extreme range shooting, had seen traditional methods produce results equal to or better than technology, had watched soldiers engage hostile forces and win decisively. The program would continue. Patterson's legacy was secure, for now. But Marcus's threat hung over everything. 3 weeks. That was all the time they had before the next battle. Before the war that had started in 1991 finally came to its conclusion. James stood alone on the range as the sun set. The targets remained at their distant positions, silent witnesses to what had transpired. He thought about Patterson, about Robert Cole, about all the men who had come before and the price they had paid. Then he thought about the recruits, about the next generation, about the fact that the fight never really ended. It just passed from one set of hands to another. Tomorrow they would begin preparing, planning, getting ready for whatever Marcus had planned. But tonight, James allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had won this round, proved what needed to be proven, honored the dead by showing their sacrifice had meaning. The old breed had risen one more time, and they were not done yet. The video went viral within 12 hours. Marcus Cole's face on every news channel, his threats dissected by military analysts and political commentators. Questions raised about Colonel Richard Voss, about classified training programs, about corruption at the highest levels of military command. By the third day, Congress had launched an investigation. The Inspector General's office had opened a formal inquiry, and Voss had disappeared, not fled the country, just vanished into the bureaucratic maze of lawyers and administrative leave and carefully worded statements that admitted nothing while denying everything. James Brennan watched it all from the training facility in the mountains. The news played on a television in the operations center. Talking heads debating, politicians posturing, the machine of government slowly grinding towards something that might resemble justice. But James knew better than to trust the machine. He had seen too many guilty men walk free, too many good soldiers destroyed by politics, too many truths buried under layers of classification and national security. The real resolution would not come from Congress or courts or official investigations. It would come from the confrontation Marcus had promised, the one that was now 2 weeks away, the final reckoning between the old breed and those who wanted to destroy it. Rebecca entered the operations center carrying fresh coffee and a troubled expression. The FBI wants to interview you and me and all 6 recruits. They have questions about Fort Campbell, about the engagement with the cartel shooters, about how we knew they would be there. James took the coffee. It was hot and bitter. Perfect. What did you tell them? That we received intelligence suggesting hostile activity, that we responded appropriately, that we offered suspects the opportunity to surrender before using force. All true, also incomplete. They know we are not telling them everything. They know this goes deeper than a random cartel incursion. James sipped his coffee, stared at the television. A retired general was explaining extreme range shooting to an anchor who clearly had no idea what he was talking about. Let them know. Let them dig. The more attention this gets, the harder it is for Voss to bury it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Rebecca sat down. She looked tired. The weight of command, the burden of carrying her father's legacy while hunting his killer. It was wearing her down. Do you think Marcus will really come? In 2 weeks? It could be a bluff, a way to keep us off balance while he escapes. James shook his head. Marcus is many things, but he is not a coward. He will come. This is personal for him. Has been since his father died. He blames me, blames Patterson, blames the entire system that values honor over survival. He will not stop until he proves we were wrong. Or until we stop him. Or that. They sat in silence for a while. The television continued its endless cycle of speculation and analysis. Outside, the December wind moved through the bare trees, cold, clean, unforgiving. I need to visit Patterson, James said suddenly. Before this ends, I need to tell him what we accomplished, what his legacy became. Rebecca nodded. I will arrange transport. When do you want to leave? Tomorrow. Take 2 days. Be back before Marcus makes his move. What about the recruits? They continue training. Morrison is ready to lead in my absence. They do not need me standing over them anymore. It was true. Somewhere in the last 8 weeks, the students had become soldiers. The soldiers had become snipers. And the snipers had become something rarer. Warriors who understood that skill without honor was just violence. That power without purpose was just destruction. James flew to Georgia the next morning. The flight was quiet. Time to think, to remember, to prepare himself for what was likely the last conversation he would ever have with the man who had shaped his life more than his own father. The VA hospital looked the same. Sterile, efficient, the machinery of end-of-life care operating with practiced indifference. James checked in at the desk. Visitor badge, directions to room 447, the same room where this had all begun 3 months ago. The door was open. James could see inside. Patterson's condition had deteriorated. The cancer had taken more, left less. The man in the bed looked like a skeleton wrapped in translucent skin, barely alive, held to this world by sheer willpower and unfinished business. But his eyes were still sharp, still clear. They found James the moment he entered the room. Hawk. The voice was a whisper, rough, painful. You came. James pulled a chair close to the bed, sat down. I came to report, sir. Mission accomplished. A smile crossed Patterson's face. Thin, fragile, but genuine. Tell me. So James did. He told Patterson everything. The training, the demonstration at Fort Campbell, the shots made at impossible distances, the engagement with Marcus's cartel shooters, the exposure of Voss, the investigation that was finally happening after 33 years of cover-up. Patterson listened without interruption. His breathing was labored, his chest barely rising and falling, but he stayed focused, absorbed every detail. When James finished, Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. Robert would be proud of you, of his daughter, of what you built. The name hit James like a fist. Robert, the ghost that haunted both of them, the man whose death had set everything in motion. I finally told Rebecca the truth about how he died, about the shot at 3,200 meters, about how he saved my life and lost his own. Patterson's hand moved slowly across the blanket, found James's hand, gripped it with surprising strength. Good. She deserved to know, deserved to understand what kind of man her father was. She is like him. Same courage, same refusal to accept injustice. And Marcus? James hesitated. Marcus is coming, in less than 2 weeks. He has promised to destroy everything we built, to kill everyone involved, to prove that honor and duty are weaknesses that get good people killed. Patterson's grip tightened. What will you do? What Robert would have done, what you taught me to do. Stand my ground, protect my people, make the hard choices that no one else wants to make. Patterson nodded, satisfied. I have something for you, in the drawer, bottom drawer of the nightstand. James opened it. Inside was a small wooden box. Old, worn, the kind that held things too precious to discard but too painful to display. Open it, James did. Inside this box was a medal, Silver Star, the nation's third highest decoration for valor in combat. The ribbon was faded, the medal tarnished, but the inscription on the back was clear. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States. Colonel William Patterson, February 18th, 1991. The date stopped James cold. February 18th, 5 days before Robert died, the same day Patterson had written about in his journal, the day he missed the shot at 3,200 meters, the day that haunted him for the rest of his life. You were decorated for that mission? Patterson's laugh turned into a cough. When it passed, he wiped his mouth. Politics. The brass needed heroes, needed someone to pin a medal on for the cameras. Did not matter that I missed. Did not matter that men died because of it. All that mattered was the narrative. He gestured weakly toward the medal. I never wore it, never displayed it, kept it hidden because every time I looked at it, I saw the faces of the 47 men who died because I was not good enough. Patterson's eyes found James's. But you were good enough. You made the shot I could not make. You completed the mission. You proved that the techniques I spent 50 years developing actually worked. That medal should be yours. James shook his head. I do not want it. Neither do I, so we will compromise. Patterson's breathing grew more labored. The effort of talking was exhausting him. Give it to your students. Tell them it represents 53 years of accumulated wisdom. Tell them they are now the guardians of that wisdom. Tell them that with it comes a responsibility to use it wisely, to teach others, to preserve what was learned in blood and sacrifice. James carefully placed the medal back in the box, closed the lid. I will tell them. One more thing. Patterson's voice was fading. The journal, I want you to add to it. Your experiences, your lessons. Everything you learned from me and everything you discovered on your own. Make it a living document, not a relic, something that grows with each generation. I will. And when your time comes, when you are the one lying in a hospital bed wondering if your life mattered, you pass it to someone worthy, someone who will carry it forward, just like I passed it to you. James felt his throat tighten. Sir, I do not know if I am worthy of that trust. Patterson's smile returned. You proved your worth at Fort Campbell. You proved it every day for 8 weeks when you trained those kids. You proved it 33 years ago when you made the shot that ended a war. His grip on James's hand weakened. I am proud of you, Hawk. Prouder than I ever was of my own sons. You took what I taught you and made it better. Made it matter. That is all any teacher can ask. The monitors beside the bed began to alarm. Patterson's breathing was becoming irregular. His color was bad. The end was close. A nurse rushed in, checked vitals, looked at James with sympathy. I'm sorry, you should say your goodbyes. James leaned close to Patterson's ear. Thank you, sir, for everything, for believing in me when no one else did, for teaching me what it means to be a sniper, what it means to be a soldier, what it means to be a man. Patterson's lips moved. James had to strain to hear. The shot at 3,200 meters, The one I missed. Did you really make it? Or did you just tell me you did to give an old man peace? James smiled. I made it, sir. Dead center, just like you taught me. Patterson's eyes closed. The smile remained on his face. He looked peaceful, content, like he had finally been relieved of a burden he had carried too long. The monitors flatlined. The nurse called for the doctor. The machinery of death began its familiar routine. But James stayed where he was, holding the hand of a man who had been more than a teacher, more than a mentor, a father in all the ways that mattered. Colonel William Patterson died at 13:47 hours on December 20th. 78 years old, veteran of 4 wars, teacher to hundreds, legend to thousands. He died knowing his legacy would continue, that his life's work had meaning, that he had made a difference. James sat with him for another hour. Then he stood, placed the wooden box with the medal in his jacket pocket, walked out of the hospital into the cold December afternoon. He did not cry. Patterson would not have wanted tears. He would have wanted action, would have wanted James to finish what they had started together. So that is what James would do. The flight back to the training facility was quiet. James spent the time reading Patterson's journal, cover to cover, one more time, absorbing lessons, memorizing wisdom, preparing for what was coming. There was an entry from 1968, Patterson's first combat deployment. He had written, "Death is part of this profession. We train people to kill. We develop techniques that end lives from distances so far the target never knows they were hunted. It is necessary work, grim work, but necessary. The burden falls on us to carry that weight with honor, to never kill casually, to never forget that every trigger pull ends a human life. That weight keeps us human, keeps us from becoming monsters." James thought about that as the plane descended toward the small airstrip near the facility. Thought about the shots he had made over the years, the men he had killed, the weight he carried. Then he thought about the recruits, about passing that weight to the next generation, about teaching them to carry it with honor the way Patterson had taught him. Rebecca was waiting when he landed. Her face told him she already knew. Patterson? Gone this afternoon, peacefully. She nodded. They saw it together in the fading light. Two people connected by ghosts, by legacy, by the understanding that some debts could only be paid forward. Marcus sent another message, video. He says he is coming in 3 days, says he will finish this face-to-face. James was not surprised. Where? Here. He wants to meet at the facility. Says he will come alone if we agree to the same. Just him and you. Winner takes all. It is a trap, obviously. But what choice do we have? If we refuse, he will come anyway. With more men, more weapons, more chaos. At least this way we control some of the variables. James thought about it. A duel. Old-fashioned. Almost chivalrous if it were not being proposed by a man who had already proven he had no honor. Tell him I accept. Just me and him, no one else. We settle this the way snipers settle things. At distance. With skill. Rebecca started to protest. James cut her off. This is not up for debate. Marcus wants me. He gets me. But on my terms. My range. My rules. And if you lose, then you make sure the program continues. Make sure Patterson's legacy lives. Make sure those 6 kids become the teachers they are meant to be. He handed her the wooden box. Patterson wanted them to have this, his medal, his blessing. Tell them it comes with a responsibility to preserve what they have learned. Rebecca took the box. Her hands were shaking. I cannot lose you too. First my father, now Patterson. If Marcus kills you, I will have no one left who understands. James placed his hand on her shoulder. You have yourself. And you have 6 soldiers who would follow you into hell if you asked. That is more than most people ever get. The next 2 days were spent preparing. James ranged the facility, planned fields of fire, identified positions that would give him advantage. He was older than Marcus, slower, but he had experience, had wisdom, had the understanding that came from 30 years of making impossible shots. The recruits trained without knowing what was coming. Morrison pushed them hard. Santos refined their techniques. They worked as a unit, as a team, ready for whatever came next, even if they did not know what that was. On the 3rd day, James gathered them for a final lesson. Not about shooting, about legacy. Colonel Patterson died 2 days ago. He was 78 years old. He spent 53 years perfecting his craft, teaching others, building something that would outlast him. James pulled out the wooden box, opened it, showed them the medal. This was awarded to him for valor in combat, but he never wore it because he did not believe he deserved it. He missed a shot, 47 men died. He carried that guilt until the day he died. He closed the box. I tell you this because someday you will miss a shot that matters. Someday you will make a mistake that costs lives. That weight will never leave you. It should not leave you. It is what keeps us human. James handed the box to Morrison. Patterson wanted you to have this, not as a trophy, as a reminder that being a sniper is not about glory. It is about responsibility, about carrying a burden so others do not have to, about making the hard choices and living with the consequences. Morrison took the box with reverence. We will honor his memory, sir. I know you will. James looked at each of them. Santos, Reeves, Kowalski, Washington, Park. 6 faces he had come to know as well as his own. 6 warriors he had helped create. Today, someone is coming to challenge me, to prove that everything Patterson taught was a lie, that honor and duty are weaknesses. I'm going to prove him wrong, but if I fail, if something happens to me, I need you to continue, to teach others, to preserve what we built here. Santos stepped forward. Sir, we should fight with you. 6 rifles are better than 1. No, this is not your fight. This is something I need to finish alone. Washington spoke quietly. My grandfather told me that the hardest battles are fought alone, but the strongest warriors are those who know when to accept help. James smiled. Your grandfather was a wise man, but this is different. This is personal. This goes back 33 years. This is about debts and ghosts and settling accounts that only I can settle. He turned to Rebecca. Keep them safe. Keep them training. And if I do not come back, make sure they know their value. Make sure they understand they are the future of everything Patterson built. Rebecca nodded, unable to speak. James picked up his rifle. Patterson's old M24. The one that had made the shot at 3,200 meters in 1991. The one that had ended a war and cost Robert Cole his life. It felt right to use it now, to complete the circle. He walked out of the facility alone. The sun was setting, the temperature was dropping. Perfect conditions for shooting. No heat mirage, minimal wind, the kind of evening where skill would determine outcomes rather than environmental luck. Marcus was waiting at the far end of the range, 3,000 meters away. A tiny figure barely visible in the fading light. He had come as promised. Alone. Or at least appearing to be alone. James did not trust appearances. A radio crackled. Marcus's voice. Hello, Hawk. Thank you for accepting my invitation. James keyed his own radio. Let us finish this. Agreed. But first, I want you to understand something. I do not hate you because you lived and my father died. I hate you because you represent a lie, the lie that honor matters, that duty is worth dying for, that there is nobility in sacrifice. Marcus paused. My father believed that lie. He died for it. And what did it get him? A flag at his funeral, a medal in a box. His children growing up without him. That is what honor gets you. Death and grief and empty gestures. James said nothing. Let Marcus talk. Let him reveal himself. I built something better. A system where skill is rewarded, where loyalty is bought, where soldiers fight for money instead of flags. It is honest. It is real. It works. It is corruption, James said quietly. It is betrayal. It is everything your father would have despised. My father was a fool, and so are you. Then prove it. We are both here, both armed, both trained by the same man. Let skill decide. Marcus laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You think this is about skill? You think I came here to have some honorable duel? To settle this like gentlemen? The tone had changed. James felt ice form in his stomach. I came here to destroy you, to destroy everything you represent, to prove once and for all that the old ways are dead. Gunfire erupted from 3 positions. Not from Marcus's location, from the flanks, from shooters James had not seen. Hidden, waiting. At least 9 rifles, maybe more, all aimed at the facility. James dove for cover as bullets tore through the air where he had been standing. He keyed the radio. Rebecca, incoming, multiple shooters, get the recruits to cover. Her voice came back. Calm, professional. Already moving? We saw them on thermal. They set up 30 minutes ago. James felt relief wash over him. She had anticipated this, had planned for it. The students were not helpless targets. They were prepared. How many? 12 confirmed. Cartel sicarios. Marcus is using them as a distraction while he goes for the real target. What target? You. Understanding dawned. The flanking shooters were not trying to hit the facility. They were trying to pin James down, to keep him from repositioning, to make him an easy target for Marcus, who was probably moving even now to a better position. James Lowe crawled through the underbrush, moving toward cover, toward higher ground, toward a position where he could see Marcus's likely approach and counter it. The facility's defensive positions opened fire. The recruits were engaging the cartel shooters. The sound of rifles echoed across the valley, tactical, controlled, professional, everything James had taught them. James reached a rocky outcrop, set up behind it, scanned for Marcus through his scope, found him, or rather, found where he had been. The position at 3,000 meters was empty. Marcus had moved the moment the shooting started. Smart, opportunistic, using chaos to mask his movement. James switched to thermal imaging, scanned the valley, looking for heat signatures, found 12 at the flanks. The cartel shooters found 6 more at the facility. The recruits? But where was Marcus? There, a single heat signature moving through the tree line, approximately 2,200 meters from James's position, working his way closer, looking for the perfect shot. James settled in, controlled his breathing, let his heart rate drop. This was what 30 years of experience had prepared him for. Not shooting paper targets, but shooting a man who was trying to kill him. A man who had his father's skills and none of his honor. Marcus emerged from the tree line, found a position behind a fallen log, set up his rifle. James could see him clearly now through the scope, could see the concentration on his face, the determination, but also something else, something James had not expected to see. Hesitation. Marcus's hands were shaking slightly as he adjusted his scope. His breathing was uneven, not from exertion, from emotion, from the weight of what he was about to do. James watched as Marcus looked toward the facility, toward where Rebecca was, toward where his sister was fighting for her life against the men Marcus had brought. And in that moment, James saw it. The doubt, the realization, the understanding that somewhere along the way, Marcus had crossed a line he could not uncross. That selling techniques was one thing, but bringing armed men to kill his own sister was something else entirely. Marcus lowered his rifle, raised it again, lowered it. Internal war playing out across 2,200 meters of mountain air. James placed the crosshairs on Marcus's center mass. His finger found the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. That was all it would take. 2 pounds and Robert Cole's son would be dead. The threat would be eliminated. The program would be safe. But James hesitated. This was Robert's son, the boy who had grown up without a father, who had been shaped by grief and anger and the unanswered questions that come with losing someone too young. Marcus had made terrible choices, had become something dark, but he was still Robert's son. And Robert would not have wanted this. James shifted his aim, moved the crosshairs from center mass to Marcus's rifle scope. A nearly impossible shot, hitting a 4-inch circle at 2,200 meters, in fading light, with the target moving. But James had made impossible shots before. He breathed, felt the earth beneath him, read the wind that was not there, calculated the trajectory, trusted 30 years of muscle memory and Patterson's training and Robert's belief that some things were worth the risk. He fired. The bullet flew for 2.9 seconds. James tracked it through his scope, watched it arc, watched it fall, watched it strike exactly where he had aimed. Marcus's scope shattered. The rifle jerked. Marcus fell back. Not hit, not wounded, just shocked. Disoriented by a bullet that had destroyed his optic and left him alive. James keyed the radio. "Stand down, Marcus. You lost. Go home." Silence. Then Marcus's voice, shaken, unsteady. "You could have killed me. Why did you not kill me?" "Because your father asked me to take care of his children. All of them, even the ones who hate me." More silence. James could see Marcus through his thermal scope, could see him sitting beside his ruined rifle, could see the fight drain out of him. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice different now, quieter, almost broken. "I do not know who I am anymore. I spent so long being angry, being bitter, blaming you, blaming Patterson, blaming the whole system. And now I look around and see what I have become, and I do not recognize myself." James waited, listening. "My father died believing in something. I convinced myself it was all a lie. That honor was just a word people used to justify getting killed. But you just spared my life when you had every reason to end it. That is not a lie. That is real. Marcus's voice cracked. I brought 12 men here to kill my own sister. What kind of person does that? What have I become? James keyed the radio again. You became what grief makes people become when they have no one to help them carry it. But it is not too late to choose differently. It is never too late. The cartel shooters, they are not going to stop. Yes, they will. Rebecca just sent the surrender signal. Your men are laying down their weapons. It was true, the shooting had stopped. The valley had gone quiet except for the distant sound of voices calling out surrender terms in Spanish and English. Marcus's voice came through the radio one more time. What do I do now? How do I fix this? You start by standing up, walking down here, facing what you did, accepting responsibility. The rest comes after. James stood, walked down from his position, crossed the valley. Marcus was still sitting beside his broken rifle when James arrived. He looked up. His face showed confusion, anger, grudging respect, and underneath it all, relief. Relief that someone had finally stopped him before he did something he could never take back. You should have killed me. Your father would not have wanted that. My father is dead because of you. Your father is dead because he chose to save my life. There is a difference. James sat down beside him. Two snipers, two men shaped by the same teacher, divided by philosophy and circumstance. Your father was the best man I ever knew, the best soldier, the best friend. His death broke something in me that never healed. I have spent 33 years trying to honor his memory, trying to be worthy of the sacrifice he made. James pulled Patterson's journal from his jacket, opened it to the entry about Robert's death. Read this. Marcus took the journal, read Patterson's words about Robert's courage, about his sacrifice, about the mission that ended a war and cost 47 American lives but saved thousands more. When he finished, Marcus's hands were shaking. I did not know. I thought it was just another mission, just another casualty. I did not know he died for something that mattered. He did, and you dishonored that sacrifice by selling the techniques he died protecting. Marcus closed the journal, handed it back. What happens now? Do you arrest me? Turn me over to the authorities? James stood, extended his hand, helped Marcus to his feet. That is not my choice to make. Rebecca is your sister. She has the authority here. You answer to her. They walked back to the facility together. The cartel shooters were being secured by military police who had arrived during the firefight. 12 men, all alive, all in custody. No one dead. No permanent damage beyond broken equipment and shattered pride. Rebecca was waiting outside the main building. She watched Marcus approach. Her expression was unreadable. When they were 10 feet apart, Marcus stopped. Hello, Rebecca. Marcus. He took a breath, steadied himself, then spoke the words he should have spoken years ago. I am sorry for everything, for threatening you, for trying to destroy what you built, for dishonoring Dad's memory, for bringing armed men here, for almost getting you killed. He paused. His voice grew quieter. I was 5 years old when Dad died. You were a baby. You do not remember him, but I do. I remember his voice, his laugh, the way he would lift me up and throw me in the air. And then one day he was just gone. And Mom said he was a hero, that he died for his country. But all I could think was that his country took my dad and gave me nothing back. Marcus's eyes were wet now. I spent 33 years being angry about that. And somewhere along the way, the anger turned into something darker. I convinced myself that if honor and duty could take my father from me, then honor and duty were lies. That the only thing that mattered was survival, money, power, things you could hold on to. He looked at Rebecca, really looked at her, seeing his sister for the first time in years. But I was wrong, and I am sorry. Rebecca said nothing for a long moment. Then she spoke. Her voice was cold, controlled. You sold military secrets to cartels. You trained killers. You sabotaged a demonstration meant to honor the man who taught you everything you know. Sorry does not fix that. I know. You put 6 soldiers at risk, young people who were just trying to learn, trying to serve. You made them targets because you could not let go of your grief. Marcus nodded, accepting it. Rebecca walked closer, looked her brother in the eyes. But you are still my brother, still Dad's son. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to turn yourself in. You are going to testify against Voss. You are going to tell the investigators everything you know about his corruption, and you are going to spend whatever time in prison you earn making peace with what you did." She paused. "And when you get out, if you get out, you are going to spend the rest of your life trying to be the man Dad thought you could be." Marcus's eyes were wet. "And if I do all that, will you forgive me?" Rebecca considered the question. "Ask me again in 10 years, after you have earned it." It was not forgiveness, but it was not complete rejection either. It was a door left open, a possibility for redemption. That was more than Marcus deserved, but exactly what Robert would have wanted for his son. The federal agents arrived an hour later. They took Marcus into custody, read him his rights, loaded him into a vehicle that would take him to a detention facility where he would await trial. He did not resist, did not protest, just went quietly like a man who had finally run out of road. As the vehicle pulled away, Rebecca stood beside James, watching her brother disappear into the night. "Did I do the right thing?" "You did what your father would have done. You gave him a chance. What he does with it is up to him." 3 days later, the news broke. Colonel Richard Voss arrested, charged with multiple counts of conspiracy, providing material support to terrorist organizations, theft of classified information, obstruction of justice. The list went on for pages. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus's testimony, Park's recordings, the signals intercept from 1991, 33 years of corruption finally exposed to the light. Voss would spend the rest of his life in prison. There would be no political escape, no legal loopholes, no quiet retirement with full pension, just a cage in the knowledge that his betrayal had finally caught up with him. James watched the news coverage from his quarters, felt something he had not felt in years. Not quite satisfaction, not quite peace, but something close. A sense that the scales had balanced, that justice had been served, that Robert Cole could finally rest. The recruits graduated the program 1 week later. A quiet ceremony, no media, no politicians, just General Wade and Rebecca and James. 6 soldiers are receiving certificates that said they had completed advanced sniper training. 6 warriors who knew the truth was far more than any piece of paper could capture. General Wade spoke before presenting the certificates. His voice was strong despite his age. "I want to tell you something about the men who made this program possible. Colonel Patterson, Sergeant Robert Cole, and the man standing beside me, Sergeant Major James Brennan." Wade paused, looked at James, then continued. "I served with all 3 of them in Desert Storm, February 1991. I was a captain then, leading a rifle company near the Kuwaiti border. We were pinned down by Iraqi artillery, 47 men in my company, nowhere to go, shells falling every 30 seconds. His voice grew quieter. "I called for air support, called for armor, called for anything that could get us out. But the weather was too bad, the enemy too close. No one could help us. I wrote letters in my head to the families of my soldiers, prepared to die with them." Wade's eyes were distant now, seeing something from 3 decades ago. "Then the artillery stopped, just stopped. We did not know why. Found out later that 2 snipers had taken out the Iraqi artillery commander at 3,200 meters. An impossible shot in impossible conditions. The battery fell apart without leadership. We escaped. All 47 of us lived." He turned to James. "Those 2 snipers were Sergeant Robert Cole and Sergeant Major James Brennan. Robert died saving Hawk's life during the extraction. But because of what they did, because of that one impossible shot, 47 soldiers went home to their families." Wade looked at the 6 recruits. "I am one of those 47. Everything I have done since that day, my career, my family, my life, it exists because 2 men refused to give up when everything said they should, because they believed in something bigger than themselves." He picked up the certificates. "What you learned here is not just about shooting. It is about carrying on that legacy, about being the kind of soldier who makes impossible shots, who saves lives, who gives others a future. That is what Colonel Patterson built. That is what Sergeant Major Brennan taught you, and that is what you will carry forward." James shook each of their hands, told them he was proud, told them they were ready, told them that Patterson's legacy lived in them now. Morrison had accepted a position as an instructor. He would teach the next class, pass on what he had learned. Santos was going to write the official training manual, codify the techniques. Reeves and Kowalski were being assigned to operational units. Washington was headed to selection for an elite counterterrorism task force. Park was going to medical school. He would serve as a combat physician, save lives with the same dedication he had learned to take them. After the ceremony, Kowalski approached James privately. "Sir, I have a request before I report to my new unit." "What do you need?" "Permission to visit my father's grave in Arlington. I have not been there since the funeral. I was too afraid, too angry, but I am ready now." James nodded. "Take all the time you need." She hesitated, then spoke again. "Would you come with me? I know it is a lot to ask, but you understood what it was like to carry that weight, and I think I need someone who understands." James thought about it, about his own ghosts, about Robert Cole, who was buried in that same cemetery, about all the men who rested there. "I will come." They flew to Washington 2 days later. Rebecca joined them, the three of them walking through Arlington on a cold December morning, row after row of white headstones, an ocean of sacrifice stretching in every direction. Kowalski's father was buried in Section 60, the newer graves, Iraq and Afghanistan, the wars that had shaped the current generation the way Desert Storm had shaped James's. Sergeant Marcus Kowalski, United States Marine Corps, born 1978, died 2018, beloved husband and father. Lisa Kowalski knelt beside the grave, placed her hand on the cold marble. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hi, Dad. I am sorry it took me so long to visit. I was scared. Scared that if I came here, it would make it real, make it final. But I am ready now." She took a breath. "I finished the sniper course, the one you always said I should do. I hit targets at ranges you never got to try. I learned from men who learned from the same men who taught you, and I thought about you every single day." Her voice cracked. "I wish you could have met Sergeant Major Brennan. He is like you. Same stubbornness, same refusal to quit, same belief that some things are worth fighting for. He taught me that carrying your death does not mean I have to be broken by it, that I can turn the weight into strength." She stood, wiped her eyes. "I love you, Dad. I will make you proud, I promise." James stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder. No words, just presence. Sometimes that was enough. Rebecca was standing 10 rows away, in front of a different grave. Robert Cole, same section, same generation of warriors, same sacrifice. James walked over, stood beside her. "I come here every year," Rebecca said quietly. "On his birthday, on the anniversary of his death. I talk to him, tell him about my life, about Marcus, about everything." She paused. "I used to be so angry that he left us, that he chose duty over family. But I understand now he did not choose duty over us. He chose duty for us, so we could live in a world worth living in." James knelt down, placed his hand on Robert's headstone. "I made you a promise, old friend. That day in the desert, you told me to make the shot count, to make sure your death meant something. I think I finally kept that promise." He stood. 6 soldiers graduated the program. 6 new instructors carrying forward what Patterson taught. What you believed in. The old ways survive. Honor survives. You survive through them. Rebecca placed a small American flag beside the headstone. Standard issue, the kind that marked every grave in this place. "Thank you," she said to James, "for everything, for training them, for saving Marcus, for keeping Dad's memory alive. I did what he would have done, what any of us would have done." They stood together for a moment. 3 warriors, 3 generations, connected by loss and legacy and the understanding that some debts could only be paid forward. Then they walked back through the rows of white stones, past thousands of men and women who had made the same choice Robert made, who had chosen duty, honor, sacrifice, who had believed that something was worth dying for. That night, James sat on his porch and opened Patterson's journal to the last page, picked up a pen, and began to write. "My name is James Brennan, call sign Hawk. I was taught by Colonel William Patterson. I served with Sergeant Robert Cole. I trained 6 soldiers who will train hundreds more. This is what I learned." He wrote it for hours, filling pages, recording techniques and wisdom and mistakes, adding his voice to Patterson's, building the living document that would be passed to the next generation and the next and the next. The old breed would never die, as long as there were warriors willing to learn, willing to sacrifice, willing to carry the weight with honor. 6 months passed. Spring came to Montana. The snow melted. The grass turned green. The horses grew fat on fresh pasture. James had settled back into his routine. Quiet days, solitary work, the peace he had sought for 6 years. But it was different now. The ghosts were quieter. The weight was lighter. He had done what Patterson asked, what Robert needed, what he owed to everyone who had come before. A package arrived one morning. No return address, just a postmark from Fort Benning. James opened it to find a photograph. 6 soldiers standing together. Morrison, Santos, Reeves, Kowalski, Washington, Park. They were wearing instructor badges, teaching a new class, passing it forward. Behind them stood Rebecca, captain's bars replaced by Major's oak leaves, promoted, leading the program now. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "The legacy continues. We are teaching 12 new students. They will teach 12 more. The old ways will never die. Thank you for showing us how. Your students." James placed the photograph on his mantle. Next to the picture of Robert Cole he had kept hidden for 33 years. 2 images, 2 generations, connected by sacrifice and honor and the understanding that some things were worth more than life itself. He stepped outside. The Montana wind carried the scent of pine and coming summer. The mountains watched, solid, real, eternal. James Brennan was 58 years old, retired, at peace. The ghosts that had haunted him for 3 decades were finally quiet. Not gone, never gone, but transformed into something else, into purpose, into meaning, into the understanding that Robert's death had mattered, that Patterson's life had mattered, that his own struggles had led somewhere worth going. The rifle in the barn stayed in its case, cleaned, oiled, ready if needed, but no longer a source of pain. Just a tool, a piece of history, a connection to who he had been and who he had become. The mountains watched. The wind moved through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, in training facilities across the country, young soldiers were learning the old ways, learning to read wind and distance and the 1,000 small factors that separated good from great. They were learning that technology could assist but never replace. That skill required sacrifice. That legacy was earned through teaching. They were learning what Patterson had spent 53 years perfecting, what Robert had died protecting, what James had passed forward. The old breed lived, not in one man, but in the unbroken chain of warriors teaching warriors. Each generation adding to the knowledge. Each teacher honoring those who came before. James Brennan stood on his porch and watched the sunset behind the western peaks. The light turned gold, the shadows grew long, and for the first time in 33 years, he felt something close to peace. The mission was complete, the legacy was secure, the debts were paid, and the old ranger could finally rest.